And good morning. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio, and it is our annual college lacrosse preview edition of Glenn Clark Radio. Joining us in studio this morning, man you follow on Blue Sky at Discourse, D1S Course, Washington Post, Blue Ribbon, USA Lacrosse Magazine, all over the place. Mr. Patrick Stevens is back with us in studio. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Glenn.
We got a busy day ahead of us as all of the coaches from the D1 programs, men's programs here in the state of Maryland, will be joining us. And let's go ahead and get that started today as right out of the chute, first on the hot seat, of course, the head coach of the Loyola Greyhounds coming off a 7-8 season. They lost in the Patriot League tournament to Navy. I'm sure he loves that I'm reminding him of that to start this conversation. It's a pleasure, as always, to welcome back to the program Coach Charley Toomey, who is up first this morning. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always good to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, hey, guys, it's great to hear your voices again. It means it's springtime, and, obviously you go outside and you see 40-degree weather versus 5-degree weather.
Yeah, right?
It feels like we're close.
It's time.
Right?
It's time, which, of course, means that it'll be snowing next weekend when you guys are getting ready to play Maryland. That's the way that it works. Coach, a lot of changes, a lot of new faces on this roster. Can you kind of break down for me how purposeful that is? Like how much it's maybe time for a new group of guys to come into this program and sort of make their mark as you guys look to kind of get back to the top of the Patriot League?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bittersweet ending of COVID. Right. You had so many guys that had fifth-year opportunities that chose to stay on. And last year was our largest graduating class since I've been here of 23. And so you're losing roughly half of your locker room, which kind of put us in a position of going to the portal and trying to bring in, a transfer, but also the largest incoming freshman class that I've ever had. So we have 19 freshmen in the locker room, and it's created some challenges. There's no question about that. The puppies, there's a lot of puppies running around in the kennel. But we also think that we've got some talented guys that are continuing to develop. And, last weekend we had a scrimmage and we saw 9 of them on the field at one point and, through the course of the day. So, we're hoping that we can grow up a little more quickly than, you typically would, where maybe you have 2 or 3 guys out there that are brand new to the program. We're running around with a lot of new faces. And then also some of the guys that are getting their first minutes, really like a Matt Dixon, really hasn't had a lot of opportunities. A Ryan McGorry, some of those guys, that have been in the locker room, just kind of sitting behind a Patra and an Evan James, who we lost to graduation. We lost 80% of our offense to graduation last year. So, it's a work in progress, and, we're excited about what we're seeing. It's going to take a minute, right?
Charlie, you mentioned having lost so much on the offensive end. You still do have Matthew Minicus, and I feel like that's probably going to be one of the centerpieces for you guys. How is he doing? What have you kind of thought of his preseason, and just how valuable do you think he's going to be for you guys this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would start off with the team electing him a captain. And so, I think that's a big role change for him. Now he's kind of got that outspoken, demeanor that we need on the sideline and certainly in the locker room offensively. And yeah, I mean, he's a bullet. He's one of the ones that but our opponents know that, right? So they're going to game plan for him and force other people to do things. Between really our 2 guys in Remy Reynolds, who's kind of a known commodity defensively, and Matt Minicus, we need those guys to really lead and to be great seniors, juniors, and Minicus is a junior, but great players in our locker room that are just kind of going to show the younger guys the way.
You say Remy Reynolds is a known commodity defensively. I believe he's also a known commodity offensively now, Coach. I'm pretty sure you're selling him a little bit short there with one of the best moments in the entire country a season ago. Some of the newcomers that are on this team, a couple of names that stand out. I know you were talking up a little bit about Kyle McCarthy and how he played in fall ball. Can you give me a little bit more of a thumbnail on him? And then a guy that I know was a really highly rated recruit is Mason Cook, someone that you expect can step in pretty quickly for this team.
Yeah, I think those are certainly two guys that are continuing to develop. Kyle has shown pretty well through the fall and certainly last weekend in our scrimmage. He kind of reminds me a lot of a Matt Houston for us. A big downhill dodging midi. But again, he's a freshman. He can run into double teams, and we're trying to work on some of those things. He's kind of what we don't have, which is that big, strong midi. We've got a lot of smaller, super skilled, players that, I think Kyle's going to have to be a really impactful freshman for us, early. And a guy that, again, I think is going to do a lot of the initiating for us. But then he also is capable, righty and lefty, to kind of get his hands free and is one of the guys with a little bit of velocity on his shot. And Mason Cook is exactly what everybody in Baltimore saw as a player and, at Blakefield. He's just super skilled, and a good decision maker. But again, I think any player that's coming into Division I from I don't care what league, it's a little bit faster. And so that's what he's kind of finding out right now, is just kind of to learn to play with the pace of a Division I game and to, get up to speed there. And, but we see those guys being, two cogs in the wheel that we're going to need this season to be successful for sure.
In the cage, Luke Stout obviously done with his time at Loyola, and a handful of guys obviously that got a little bit of time last season, most notably Max Watkinson got a couple starts. How has that competition kind of shaped up to this point? And, you've been through it obviously with first-time goalies. How different is it when you have a goalie that's just kind of acclimating themselves to a larger role than what they're accustomed to?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of went through a moment last year where I think Ben Abel got a start. I think Max Watkinson, got a few starts. And you said it right off the bat. There's competition, and so they see that. I don't think they feel that 100% in practice, and maybe they do. I played that position. I know what it's like. But that's kind of where we are. We just continue to tell them that, everybody has to be ready at a moment's notice. And I would even throw Carter Hagan in there as one of our freshmen from Connecticut, Darien goalie, who's played really well, through the course of the early spring. And so, those guys, we're gonna probably go into this thing. Again, we still have 3 days to make this decision, but last weekend we started Max. And we felt like there's some areas where, Ben could probably, win the job over the next 3 days or not. But I would say Max is probably, we're leaning that direction as an older guy that's kind of had those minutes. But it's a long season, and I feel like, we just need to continue to develop there. And, as I told those guys, the guy that is going to be the most consistent and the best leader and command his defense, probably the one that gives up the least amount of rebounds so we don't have to redefend, is probably going to be the guy that settles in.
Loyola lacrosse coach Charley Toomey is with us on the preview show. They open at Georgetown on Saturday before hosting Maryland the following Saturday. Kind of a similar story at the Dot. Coach Carson Hall probably has the most experience. Is that the guy that maybe gets the first crack at it this season?
Yeah, that's been another battle. Sawyer Allen was hurt last year. He's been around. He kind of was a transfer from from a Division III program to us, and so those guys have been battling. I would even throw Mason Graves and Aiden Kamerer. For once, Coach Vagness has a stable of guys for practice that he can work with. No doubt about it. Carson Hall was probably our guy last year, but there wasn't with Sawyer Allen's injury just a lot around him, and so we feel like we've got some good competition there. I would tell you that Sawyer Allen took probably the bulk of the faceoffs last week in our scrimmage, but I could easily see, depending on the matchup, and that's another thing. It's a game within the game, as you guys know, at the Faceoff X. One guy probably gets 3 reps, and you want to move on to the next so that they don't get a steady feel for who you're throwing out there. Well, we certainly feel like we've got a couple capable guys, to throw to the X to give opponents a little to think about.
And I guess in general, Coach, right? Like we think about some of your best teams. Faceoff was such an important part of of all of that, and obviously the Savios and the success they had, no matter who it is, how do you get back to that level of having more of the possession and the things that we grew accustomed to when you guys were winning the Patriot League?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the communication between that as a unit, right? It's not just the face-off guy. I know that with Bailey and certainly with Graham, they were capable of picking the ball up themselves. But so we had really good box out wings. Now without having a Mustang Sally, a Peyton Razanka, Matt Higgins, some of those short sticks, we've actually got some new faces there as well. So it's developing that communication, on those wings. I could tell you this though, everybody jokes around about, winning our biggest games in the Final Four. We won 7 faceoffs through the course of the whole weekend, and we're able to, somehow beat Notre Dame and Maryland many years ago. But I'm a firm believer in you just got to get stops, right? And so if you're growing up there, and that could be the case for us a little bit, throughout the early part of the season with the Big Ten and the ACC. If we're growing up there, we might not get the bulk of them. We got to get stops and let those guys continue to develop through the season. And that's the one thing, and you talked about it, the Patriot League, Hayashi at Navy and Coletti, up at Army. I mean, we got some of the best face-off guys in the country in this league. And so, it's we don't see them until later in the year. It's how we develop as a program.
Charlie, you brought up a little earlier about the fifth-year guys not being around anymore, and I'm curious if this feels like a little bit of a throwback, even if it is maybe a younger team than what you would have been accustomed to in the pre-COVID era, and whether this is something that maybe you're a little more comfortable with, just the 4-class situation, as opposed to the 5 classes that you guys were juggling the last few years.
Yeah, what's fun about it is you're coaching every day, right? Like new drills, even drills that we've done for a long time. You've got to go out and you've got to coach, for 2 straight hours. You can't just roll the ball out and they're going to get to their spots, call a drill, and they're going to run. And you've got 5 freshmen to kind of fill in, 6, 7, 8 freshmen to fill into the lines, and they're going to go take those last reps. I mean, those freshmen are at the front of the line, so you're coaching, everything. And I would tell you that that's been a lot of fun. You just have to live through some of the mistakes. I joked around with some of our alumni, like, we're just a bunch of golden retrievers. Like, you throw a ball and we're just going to have a lot of guys chasing it right now. And, you hope that we can kind of be that team throughout the year, but then develop, some great spacing, some 6-on-6, and, make something happen where we can find Minicus on the backside and let him do his thing. But in the meantime, it has been fun to have a younger group of guys. But I'm not going to lie, you pull your hair out a little bit for sure.
I understand that. I understand it. It's funny, you broke the school record for wins last year. Was part of the deal that Dave said, hey, look, you can have the record, but then you got to put Shawn on the staff. That's the way it's going to have to work if you're going to take the record down.
Yeah, I joke with Coach. He said, man, I'm just glad it wasn't against me. Well, I let him remember that, you're the guy that knocked me out of the tournament last year at Navy.
Fair.
But we are very happy and excited to have Shawn on our staff. He's got a great mindset, a great, guy for developing, certainly offensive talent. I know Coach Van finally, is excited to have somebody down there, on his end, kind of another set of eyeballs, if you will, and somebody on a whiteboard. And more importantly, what Shawn does a great job of is just developing relationships with our guys, and being a younger coach. I think it's excellent. And then he's got an eye for the recruiting, so it's just going to help us in so many different ways, on this program. So we just have to watch what we say. We start telling old Coach Cottle stories, right? And we're like, yeah, but he goes, Coach, I've heard them all.
With the non-conference schedule, I thought one interesting tweak for you guys this year was moving that Towson game, that midweek game, to April as opposed to the late February or early March spot it's been in. What was kind of the thinking behind that? Does it kind of clear things up a little bit with that rigorous February schedule? Maybe break up some things in league play as well. What was kind of behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our main goal is to finally get that game to a Saturday, and that's something we've been working on, trying to figure out. But really, the only way to move it to a Saturday currently, is to really look at your February games. And so, what we both decided, well, if it's going to be a midweek game, let's try to look at our spring breaks first, which don't quick, align. So, what we did is we just moved it into April and tried to figure out a way to play it a little bit later in the season so possibly we can get some more people in the stands for both teams, because I think it is a great rivalry. And certainly having been a player in this locker room, I know what Towson week was like as a player. I know how our alumni feel about that game. It'd certainly be nice to have a few more of them in the stands to watch it.
Coach, broadly, right? Like this team to get that proverbial next step, and I know it's not going to be easy with a young team, but how does this team grow up quickly and get into a place where it's ready? It's not going to be easy right out of the chute, clearly, because you always keep that schedule difficult in the non-conference. But how does this young team get together to be ready to compete in the Patriot League this season?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's kind of baptism by fire, right? And so there's a reason we play the schedule we play. I think it's great for recruiting. I think it's great, for our fan base. We're committed to it. But we have to continue to develop and recognize that, yes, we play early against Colgate on March 1st. But the bulk of our schedule, is in March and April. And so it's not what we look like now. And certainly this weekend, it's how we develop. And even as coaches, like how we figure out and start to fall into who is our first, line midfield, who is our second line midfield, because we are juggling an awful lot. And when you have young guys, the consistency might not be there day to day. And that's what we try to, tell these guys is we're looking for the most consistent players so that you make our jobs a little bit easier. And that's just the world that we live in right now. And like I said, it's a lot of fun because you're coaching, but we're probably not as clean as we'd like to be really anywhere on the field with a very young short stick unit and just a lot of new faces offensively. But we're getting there. And like I said, we're going to chase that tennis ball around.
We're going to look forward to seeing how it all comes together. As we mentioned, it starts Saturday at Georgetown, and then big one at home. Yeah, it's cold, but it's going to be an awesome atmosphere. Loyola in Maryland on February 8th at Ridley. Coach, appreciate you as always. Look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Always appreciate you guys. Thank you, fellas.
Charley Toomey, Loyola lacrosse coach, first up on the lacrosse preview show. All right, Patrick Stevens, your thumbnail on the Greyhounds.
In one word, untested. And so we're going to see in February as they go through Georgetown and Maryland and Hopkins and Rutgers just how tested they're going to be. They're not going to be untested for long. So
you brought up something interesting, and obviously, look, I think everybody knows I have a vested interest here as I do call the games for Loyola, but in the last couple of years, they've had a lot of these really big early season wins. Maryland and Hopkins 2 years ago, Georgetown last year, and it's gotten the expectations kind of wild and crazy, whereas the flip side is maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if this year maybe that's the part of the schedule that doesn't go quite as well, but that helps get them more prepared and ready for the Patriots.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things that's happened here over the last few years is you've seen the sort of stratification in the RPI where the ACC and the Big Ten teams are further ahead for sure, simply by playing each other and going out and playing decent in non-conference play. And so it makes it hard for the Patriot League. I should throw the Ivy League into that group too.
Sure.
But it makes it hard for the Patriot League, or while we're talking about other teams in the area, the CAA with Towson, to be multi-bid leagues, and it's getting harder and harder. And so, I think if you're Loyola, whether you like it or not, that the games against Maryland and Hopkins and what have you, they're wonderful luxuries to go get if you can win them. But the most important thing is can you plow through your conference? Can you peak in May? Can you win those 2 or 3 games the last week of the season going into the tournament? And so I think for Loyola, if we give Loyola the same record the last few years, but we flip things where you lose those early season games, but you win a couple extra conference games, does your perception of them change a little bit? I think it does a little bit, because like you said, especially 2 years ago, that team got a lot of people's hopes up with the way it started, and there just wasn't much left in the tank at the end of that season. And last year was a bit more of a slog as that group tried to figure things out. So. And I think that was somewhat a function, frankly, of Georgetown having a lot of new faces in that opener and not know. I think that Loyola played well, but I think it was a function of Georgetown maybe not really knowing who it was at that stage either. So tough spot. But I do think that if you're Loyola with this group, it's definitely, even if it's not necessarily linear, you should reasonably expect this to be a group that gets better as the year goes along. I don't think this is a team that's going to play its best lacrosse or have its best results in February.
Obviously, we'll have another Patriot League team to discuss a little bit later on as Navy joins us. So, let's lay this out. Loyola already chatted with Charley Toomey. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, Ryan Moran from UMBC. Later on this hour, Chris Ryan from Mount St. Mary's. Then in the 11 a.m. hour, Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins, as well as Joe Amplo from Navy, John Tillman from Maryland, and we'll wrap up today's show chatting with Shawn Nadelen from Towson, who is actually darting off the practice field to come hang out with us in studio a little bit later on, so we will look forward to that. The College Lacrosse Preview Show, Griffin, is brought to you by the CIAA Tournament. That is right, and it is coming back to Baltimore, as Baltimore will welcome the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament at CFG Bank Arena from February 25th through March 1st. Tickets are available, and you can get them now at Ticketmaster.com. Again, Ticketmaster.com for your tickets to the Food Lion CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th. Through March 1st. We continue along this morning. Next up on the hot seat, his team went 5-7 a year ago, but 4-3 in conference play, reached the America East Tournament, falling to Vermont in the semifinals. He is the head coach of the UMBC Retrievers. He's Ryan Moran, and he is with us now on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me again.
It's great to chat with you. I imagine maybe it would be easier to chat with you if you weren't looking to replace so many goals and points from a year ago, but I guess such is life when you're in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on there.
So walk me through, right? I'm assuming that part of the story is Jordan Galloway is just he's a big part of that. But what else do you do to try to make up for the loss of a Tregening, a loss of a Mike Doty? How do you get those? Where do you find that offense?
Well, we. Through recruiting, and I think we recruited some really talented players who just haven't had a lot of opportunity to gain that experience of getting on the field, which they are getting right now in the fall that we just had, and obviously preseason and some of the scrimmages. So I think we have some athleticism. I think we have some playmaking ability. I just think we have a bunch of kids that aren't used to being on the field all the time and have maybe been a little bit in the backdrop the last 2 years with some of the more experienced kids that we've had. So as a staff and as a team, we're just looking for every opportunity to extrapolate experience and get these guys in game-like situations as much as possible to get them confident, to allow them to showcase that athleticism, that skill that they have.
It feels like there's a lot of new everywhere for you guys, not just at the offensive end, face-off, goalie, all that stuff. How much of a challenge is it when you have a bunch of those areas where you're turning things over, as opposed to one area and you're just trying to massage that situation and get that group to get a little more prepared as you head into a season?
Yeah, it's definitely a test of patience, and understanding that this is all a process, and we're definitely going to take some hits and learn from them, and hopefully only take the same hit once. But this goes back to last May in our first team meeting when we addressed, hey, like part of our focus right now is we just need to work on being a more mature group, do things the right way, handle your business, train seriously, sacrifice. And then, as we got them back into the fall and into the spring, it's really been more about, hey, let's get this group experience. And we've really shifted how we practice. We've been doing a lot more like full field game, like drills and stuff to have them experience those variables and that chaos that sometimes comes from lacrosse that you just don't get unless you're experiencing it.
Coach, if I could, I want to go back as I brought up Jordan Galloway's name. Obviously, I think it goes without saying a huge part of what it is that you're doing. Also voted a team captain. What has made him so special, and how critical is his success to everything you're going to accomplish this year?
Jordan's certainly an important piece of the puzzle offensively for us. He's just a very hardworking, humble kid, and that's what I love most about him. He shows up, is very durable, comes to work, practices hard. He'll obviously be a focal point for us, but I'd like to think he's probably going to be a focal point for the defenses that we go against too.
Sure.
So he's going to draw a lot of attention. And, I think last year was Coach Griffin's first year as the offensive coordinator here. And I thought he did a great job in terms of making the offense very much a we offense, in terms of everyone playing together, in terms of how we share the ball and how we move. And we're doing very similar things right now. And it's more about the six guys having chemistry, playing together, than just one guy being able to, hey, I can kind of control the game. And Jordan very much buys into that as well, very much.
We've talked in past years about you guys starting about the same time the Ivy League does with their opener, February 15th this season. It feels like this is a year where that really, I would think, would be pretty helpful to have that extra practice time to lead into the season as well.
Yeah, I would have been a genius last year if I said, well, in a year from now, we're going to really need a couple of extra weeks prior to starting up. But, it certainly is helping us in terms of just getting that experience before we start up. Again, I have scrimmages versus Hopkins versus Princeton in the past, usually Delaware, although we couldn't make that work out this year. And although they're not real games, the kids, they show up and they're every bit as excited and ready to compete. You're seeing Hopkins, you're seeing Delaware, you're seeing Princeton. So they may not necessarily count in terms of the overall record, but the experience you get from going against teams like that are really well coached, that are really talented. It really helps you kind of figure out your team in terms of what you think you're good at, that maybe you're not as good as you thought, or here are some glaring deficiencies that we really need to address, either personnel change wise or schematically what we're doing.
I guess with that in mind, as we're chatting with Ryan Moran from UMBC, normally we have these conversations and we ask questions like, hey, have you settled on face-off specialists? Have you settled on goalie? Clearly, with there not being a game for a little while, you kind of don't have to make those decisions yet. But can you kind of give us a look, and maybe we'll start in goal. Billy Stevens, someone who brings back some experience, a little bit of playing time. Was he the top guy going into this? That's where you at with the goalie situation.
Right now, I don't have a problem saying that Connor McMahon has been playing absolutely well. We, looked to potentially redshirt him last year by not playing him to get extra years. And Jason Tingay was fantastic for us for the last 2 years as a starter. But in practice, I think if you asked a lot of our guys, like, hey, Connor was pretty close behind him the whole time. So we're pretty comfortable in the goal.
Okay.
If there was actually a position where I felt pretty secure right now in terms of, hey, we know who our guy is. It's definitely Connor, and he's played fantastic this preseason and obviously the whole fall as well prior.
Just want to kind of take a wider angle look at the entire America East, and it felt like maybe as much as any other conference last year that the AE was a league where there was a lot of unpredictability from week to week, and I'm curious if that's kind of your perspective as well, and if you see it as a conference at this point where there realistically are 4 or 5 teams capable of going out and winning the thing this year.
I'd like to think so. Obviously Albany's probably in most people's minds a little bit of a front runner, winning it last year, returning a lot. But you're looking at a conference where Binghamton beat Albany in the last week. They would have been the number 1 seed, and they lose to Albany, and they finished 6th in the conference. So that's how razor thin it was with goals against margins and wins losses. So I'd like to think all the teams, including UMass Lowell and NJIT, are getting super competitive as well, having really good games. So it's a fun conference to be in, especially as the March and April goes on, as it starts to settle and you start to see where you might fall, and hopefully that's in the conference tournament.
It went so well when we talked about goalie. I'm going to give it a shot at face-off as well. But based on the way that you described it, a goalie, I'm going to guess that the answer isn't quite as Crystal maybe at the face-off dots.
Face off, Alex Steers is a guy who's been doing really well for us in practice, and every time he's had his chance in years prior, he's done very well, and he's definitely a front runner right now to be a guy to hopefully carry the lion's share. I mean, the big workload of being a face-off guy. But Houston Horton has been doing really well, and then we actually have two short sticks. Trey Fleece and Justin Weber, who play short stick D midi, but also have facing off experience. And, this year with the new face off rule of if you violate, your guy has to come off and you put someone else on. For us, it's not a bad idea to maybe just be able to give our short stick an opportunity to maybe try and muck it up a little bit. And then you really don't have any subs you're going to have to make if you do lose it. So you don't waste any time in the substitution game or giving up any transition or any offense off the face off.
Kind of a basic question, given the number of new faces that we're probably going to see in the lineup for you guys. But who do you feel like's the most improved player, or two or three of the most improved players in your program year over year?
Maybe if I just probably be easier if I go through position. I think on attack, Connor Chick has done really well in the fall. He's kind of grown up in terms of just that overall maturity, in terms of knowing how hard you have to work to get what you want out of this. And he's definitely, when we talk about guys that get on the field, we like to use words like consistency and reliability. And if you aren't consistent in reliability, you're more of like an EKG, up and down, good, bad. That's kind of how he was his first 2 years, but now it's been a lot more good. So really happy with him. And then, improvement of the midfield. Obviously, we have Jordan. We got a handful of younger guys like Nick Gutierrez, Corey Myers, Aiden Davis, who's a freshman. We got guys like that who are all just steadily improving, but going to have their opportunity to get on the field and improve that consistency and reliability. Defensively, Dylan Sharp has improved greatly as a pole. He's a kid who was in the fall last year, probably last on the depth chart, and then by April was first on the depth chart. His growth as his freshman year and improvement was great, and that's a testament to Coach Chick. And he's getting better as a pole. So kind of hit the attack, middies, and D for you there.
It's a pretty good, at least a number of options for that list. Coach, a local name, someone I think a lot of people around here know that you added to your staff. Tell me about young man Luke Schilling, what it is that he's bringing to your group.
Oh, well, Luke's great. First and foremost, he laughs at all my jokes, so he's keeping my morale high most of the day.
Is that the most important job of an assistant coach, by the way? Is that where is that? If you rank,
if you can do it, and the head coach actually believes you're laughing, then that's a keeper right there. But no, he's been great. Great staff dynamic with him coming in. Friendly, personable. Really getting along with the kids really well in terms of just being able to communicate and coach them up. He's helping out a lot with our man up offense right now and running our box and kind of getting his feet wet in the office, kind of getting a real look at the day-to-day of what it's like to be a college coach.
Coach, broadly, right? This is, as Patrick brings up, this is a team with a lot of new faces, a lot of younger team. What will it take for this group to be able to grow up and compete in the America East this season?
We're gonna have to, like I tell our guys, our season isn't a test of wins or losses. It's a test of improvement over time. So we gotta just be able to continue to get better, individually, and then hopefully that individual development, adds towards the collective. And again, I'm going into year 9, and it's fun. Each year's different, but then you can look back on other years. And I remember very similarly going into 2019, where we started that year like 1-5, just kind of getting our butts kicked a little bit, but not losing faith and not losing morale. Those two elements I thought really propelled that team from losing, 4 of their first 5 games to winning 5 of their last 6 games. So we had to understand that this is definitely a process, and just a process of improvement, and hopefully, syncing that improvement with peaking at the right time. But we understand, hey, we're going in scrimmages right now, lots of new faces. Our expectation isn't for you to be perfect, but our expectation is for you to be hungry to improve and not just settle down, like be complacent, which our guys aren't right now, which is a good sign.
Season gets underway at Drexel on February 15th, and then the first home game the following Friday, the 21st, against Mount St. Mary's. Coach Ryan Moran, always appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Absolutely, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
Ryan Moran, UMBC lacrosse coach. Patrick Stevens, your thumbnail on the Retrievers.
Young. We could also use untested again if you really wanted to, but I think he kind of really covered it with that last answer. Like, I think realistically that the first month of the season could be pretty rough for these guys. And then the question becomes, how much did you learn? How much did you improve? And how ready are you to go through your conference schedule in the America East? I mean, you kind of look at that schedule right out of the chute, and Drexel, I think, is a team that can be in the top half of the CAA. You got Towson at the end of the month. That's probably the best team on their schedule. At Richmond the following week, a team that is consistently hovering around that 15 to 20 area. And then it's pretty much league play almost the rest of the way, except for a neutral site game against Holy Cross the last week of the regular season. They're sort of there's 7 teams in the league, and you need a designated survivor to play a non-conference game or have a bye. So they're playing Holy Cross up in New Jersey. So. But I do think... Sure. I mean, well, there's 9 teams in the Patriot League.
Yeah.
Designated survivor against designated survivor.
And just meeting in a random...
It's in a high school,
Yeah, right.
But hey, I mean, it's a chance to go to, recruit in a different...
100%.
It's something different, right? So I think ultimately the key for them, and he's right, is to not judge too much based on those first 4 games, that first month or so. And to kind of hang in there. Now, we talked about how they don't play until later in the year. It's basically only Friday and Saturday games for them, except for that Thursday at the end. So I think it's 11 total games prior to the conference tournament. So unfortunately, like if you take your lumps for 4 games, that's a third of your schedule. So you have to be able to hang in there and try to get better and improve. And so I'm certainly encouraged for him from what he's saying about the goalie situation, because if you at least have, if Connor McMahon is a stabilizing force there, that's at least one box that gets checked. But I also think too that you're still talking about a lot of new faces in a lot of places, so it's going to take some time, I think, for them to kind of become a cohesive group. But if it happens by the time April hits, they're going to be a threat in that league. I mean, 4 of the 7 get in. So if you can simply win 3 games, you're probably going to be in decent shape. Split those 6 conference games, you're going to be in decent shape to make the tournament, and then it's all bets are off at that point.
Connor McMahon, a local kid out of Archbishop Spalding, who apparently is going to get that opportunity. All right, when we come back in, our next opportunity is going to be with Mount St. Mary's coach Chris Ryan as we continue along. Patrick Stevens is in studio with us. It's our annual college lacrosse preview show here on Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland, at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at DriveEasyMD.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR, and today, of course, being our annual college lacrosse preview show, Patrick Stevens is in studio with us as we continue to chat with the head coach of the D1 programs across the state. Give me 1 second to remind you that if you want to find out anything there is to know about high school sports here in the state of Maryland, you can check out countysports.zone. It's proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Scores, schedules, updates, news, rankings, whatever it is that you want to know as they're moving towards the postseason in high school basketball. And it's not just basketball or lacrosse. It's every sport, every team, every level, every school across the state. They've got your information at countysports.zone. Next up this morning here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show, he's getting ready for his second season as the head coach of the Mountaineers. Out at Mount St. Mary's, he is Coach Chris Ryan, and he's with us now here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, guys, it's great to be on. Thanks for inviting me up here to talk some cold early season lacrosse as we get going here.
Getting ready for a game on Saturday at Queens. Coach, look, obviously there's no way to sugarcoat it, right? We know it was a tough season a year ago. You have done an awful lot of winning during your time at Mercyhurst. Was there a humility that had to come with going through it? Like, I'm sure you knew that it wasn't just going to be, hey, we'll go win the league in year one. But I guess what did you learn most from going through a season like that about the transition to being a head coach at the D1 level?
Yeah, you know what? To tell you the truth, I think myself and the coaching staff arrived with a good bit of humility, knowing the process that we were beginning here at the Mount. So I think as the season went on, yeah, you know, there was one time I think after a game where maybe, you know, frustrations on my part started to bubble up a little bit. You know, I turned to the assistant coaches and just said, you know, geez, like it used to take a decade to lose, you know, 14 games. But again, when I came to the Mount and I recognized the potential that was here, I also knew that there was a process that was going to accompany my tenure here. So we sort of arrived last year feeling the landscape out and getting to know things. Sure, we would have all loved to have won 14 games last year. It just wasn't going to be the case. So yeah, there was a good bit of learning to do. There was a good bit of adjustment to do. But I like where this year's team is, and I like the adjustments we've made, and we're looking forward to getting down to Charlotte on Saturday.
Chris, just out of some curiosity, like, what have been kind of the transformations that you feel like have occurred? What sorts of adjustments have been made, and what areas do you feel like this team is more different than it was a year ago?
Well, I think first and foremost, when the kids arrived back to school this year, you know, someone would walk in, I'd be like, "Hey, Kevin, how was the summer?" Last year it was, "Hi, I'm Coach Ryan."
Nice to meet you.
So there was a familiarity. I think there was a greater understanding by the kids of what the expectations are and what the standard is. You know, we spent a good amount of time last year just implementing the beginnings of the culture that we want to have at the Mount. Whereas this year the kids came back, they did a great amount. We readjusted what we were doing over the summer with strength and conditioning. The kids came back in great shape. And with just a greater knowledge of what to expect and what we needed to do. And I think that understanding culturally of who we are, what we want to become, and how we're going to get there has been just a great help. I think there's been also, along those lines, I think there's been a real progress in the leadership on the team as far as guys understanding how to lead and what the expectation is there. We've seen a lot of personal growth. Senior Makai Nelson for us. Last year, Makai at this time was struggling with some things. This year after our scrimmages over the weekend, he says, "Hey, coach, can I keep the guys in the locker room and speak to them after you're done?" So again, there's just been a lot of growth, and obviously now we're interested to see in year 2, what steps forward we take, and there is a plan in place. That's a deliberate steps are being taken, and we're interested to see how far we come along.
Chris, the one of the standouts in what was a tough season was a freshman, Brody Atkinson, a local kid out of St. Paul's, who scored a ton of goals. And I imagine what that means moving forward. Like, if that's what he was as a freshman, and I know that there'll probably be a little bit more attention that comes his way, but what is that young man capable of now moving forward in this program?
Brody, going off of our last year, going off of our scrimmage in like 3 out of our first games, he basically got baptism by fire, running for his life from All-Americans. So he has a pretty quick learning curve, but he's mature beyond his years. He's a perfect kid for the Mount and what we're trying to do here. But one of the things as a sophomore that you have to be aware of, I always tell the sophomores, especially, those who have had successful freshman year, like the scout is out on you now. So you have to continually evolve your game. You have to be willing to change. One of the big things that we've, been stressing with the guys is the ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And a lot of times that means you're going to have to look at things differently. You're going to have to do things differently. You're going to have to maybe your pregame prep has to be at a higher level. Your work in the weight room has to be more intense. So I'll be interested with Brody to see, again, that evolution on the field. But he's a kid that 100% possesses the attributes to be successful in all those things I just said.
Just a quick look at the roster, and maybe my numbers are off a little bit, but I count 2 grad students, 8 seniors, 9 juniors, 6 sophomores, and 21 freshmen.
Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Which might actually enhance the age of the team at this point. But I gotta wonder. I'm sure some of this is by design and some of it's by necessity. Having
That's a good way to put it.
Having that large a freshman class, what's it like kind of dealing with that kind of group? And I would also think that in terms of, as you try to build a culture, that having all these guys coming in, since you arrived, probably is a good step towards getting that fast tracked a little bit.
Yeah, we had to make some changes at the end of the year. I don't think any coach is comfortable, making those changes, but it was for us to do the things for us to sort of step in and start to push that potential that's here at the Mount. We had to do it. And we tried to get those guys assimilated as quickly as possible. Over the summer, we get them involved with a Big Brother program here where they're matched up with an upperclassman, and those relationships become really strong. But we tried to get them going culturally with the team as soon as possible, because when you do have 19 freshmen on the team and then a host of transfers, I mean, I believe, guys, you don't want me doing math, but I believe you're looking at close to 60% of the roster is new.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have 19 freshmen on the team, I sat down with them when they got here and I said, listen, we've got to start to grow up. We've got to start to mature. because you guys are going to have, just by sheer number, you're going to have a great effect on how practices go. You're going to have an effect on how, what we can implement. We're going to put a lot of energy into you guys because, let's face it, some of you are going to, some of you are going to be on the field pretty early. So it can be challenging as a coach. I mean, just imagine if you're in a house with 19, 18-year-olds running all over the place. It can be like herding cats at times. But again, when I think we really lean on their buy-in into the culture that we're building and them understanding it. And, at that point, sometimes you just say, guys, just listen to what we're saying. Just do as we're doing. You feel like that parent, like, guys, I always tell them, if all the adults in your life are telling you something and it's all the same things, it's because we know things. So just do what we say. And I'm always fond of saying we allow free thinking second semester, senior year. Till then, just do what we tell you to do.
Yeah, it's when you're eligible to think on your own.
That's
Chris Ryan, Mount St. Mary's lacrosse coach, is with us. Coach, I know that not a ton of experience, but you did turn late in the season last year to Bennett Wright between the pipes. Does he inherit the role coming into this year?
He didn't inherit the role. We also brought in a transfer from Albany, Jack Van Volkenberg, and those two have been duking it out. Bennett over the weekend, Jack's been a little dinged up, so Bennett got a lot of playing time this past weekend against Lafayette and St. Joe's, and actually had a terrific day inside the pipes, developing a lot of confidence. So, he's a competitor. And then we had a freshman, Trevor Sutton, out of Baldwinsville, New York, get some playing time this weekend. And Trevor did well when we got in there. So we're feeling pretty good about the goalie play right now. And yeah, we got an inkling of that last year when we put Bennett into, the middle of games. I think there were 2 games where we pulled our goalie and put Bennett in, and he had really good games. It really solidified things, and that's when I first got the inkling to how much of a competitor he is. So we've been pretty happy with Bennett at this point, and we'll see how the weekend goes.
Kind of curious as to how you went about sort of tweaking the schedule a little bit. I'm intrigued that you guys open up with a further away road game than Mount St. Mary's typically has. If it is on the road, it's typically been teams like Navy or Delaware or what have you. And this is down to Charlotte to take on Queens. Is that kind of a bonding opportunity as much as anything else with this particular team? And what kind of informed just the way you went about constructing the non-conference schedule?
Well, guys, it's supposed to be 63 degrees in Charlotte this weekend.
You need anybody to go on the road with you?
Come on, jump on the bus. So when I was at Mercyhurst, we opened up every year at Wingate, and that was me explicitly looking for weather with it. No, you know what? Like, when you have such a young team, I had an alumnus ask me a couple weeks ago. He said, "Coach, what are you trying to what's the goal of this year?" And I said, confidence. You have young guys on the team. We need to get them into environments where they can build confidence, build experience, and we can again take deliberate steps to bring this program along to get it to the point where we know it can go. But I just last year I felt like the guys, we went down, we opened up at Navy. 2 weeks, Towson, 2 weeks later at UMBC. And we went into the Monmouth game, which we lost in double overtime. But we went into the Monmouth game with 5 healthy offensive midfielders. And I just said, where's the sense in this right now?
Yeah.
So it's very much, again, taking sensible, deliberate steps to build the program. And first and foremost this year, build confidence with the kids.
Makes sense. It makes sense. It was something that I was noticing and just looking back that the first head coach at Mount St. Mary's, Randy Kilgore, passed away in the fall. I just wonder if, obviously you don't have that connection, and I'm not suggesting that you knew Coach, but I would imagine that's something that you want to do this season to try to honor him.
Yeah, we're going to be honoring Randy on April 5th. There's a doubleheader here. We have Canisius, and the women's team, I believe, has Fairfield. I've been hearing a lot of stories about Coach Kilgore, and I've been hearing about this white flagpole that the alums still have nightmares about. I did not know Coach Kilgore, but I think as a coach, you can appreciate his dedication. I mean, he literally volunteered years and years of his time and effort and energy to building the Mount program. And there is a strong affinity by many of the alums still to this day towards Coach. So you can absolutely recognize the impact that he had on his players. I mean, one on Mount St. Mary's University and the lacrosse program, obviously, but individually, you know, those guys still identify with Coach, and they still take his teachings into their jobs and their family life. And there's no greater compliment that a coach can receive than players taking what they learned during their time as a student athlete and being successful with, you know, maybe a lesson, a piece of what, you know, of what you taught them while they were here. And it's obvious that Coach Kilgore had that effect on his players.
That's awesome. Coach, we will look forward to seeing you this season, of course, as we mentioned, at Queens on Saturday, then the first home game the following Saturday against LIU out in Emmitsburg. Appreciate you taking the time for us this morning. Thanks so much for doing this, Chris.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on. It's been wonderful.
That's Chris Ryan, Mount St. Mary's lacrosse coach here on the preview show. Your thumbnail on the Mountaineers.
Realistic, I think, might be the word to throw there. Chris Ryan sounds like a man that knows exactly what's coming. I think last year there was certainly some bullishness. You've got that, you know, that new coach vibe and all that, and
the new coach smell.
New coach smell, whatever you want to call it there. And so you don't want to sit there and go, gosh, we're going to go 1-14. I think, you know, when you look at the roster composition, another young team, that's 3 young teams that we've been talking about so far, that you look at that and you go, well, you know, there could be some lumps in there. It's a team like UMBC that you're probably looking at being better at the end of the season than you are at the beginning of the season, and better equipped to deal with your conference opponents than you are your non-conference opponents. I do think that their non-conference schedule is relatively manageable, all things considered. That's not to say that they're going to go win a bunch of those games, but I think that they could be competitive in a lot of those games. There's a game against Wagner in there. I think there's a game against LIU, who's pretty decent. St. Bonaventure, an A-10 team. They go to UMBC. They play Monmouth. So, and Queens is a second or third year Division I team. So, you know, I think for the Mount, it's a matter of growing up, and growing up at a lot of different places. They do have, you know, I think 3 of their top 4 scorers back from last season. So there's at least a little bit of a foundation at that end of the field. Again, you look at a team that has 21 freshmen and 25 of everything else. There's going to be some ups and downs to that. But I think if you're the Mount, you want to see guys get better as the year goes along. And it's a league that takes, I think, six of its teams into the conference tournament. I think that qualifies as a successful season for the Mount if they're able to
step forward.
A step forward. That's not something that you're going to sit there and judge in year 5 and year 6 as a victory in and of itself. But I think right now you would certainly argue that would qualify as progress for these guys.
When we come back in, Johns Hopkins, fresh off another run to the NCAA Tournament quarterfinals a year ago. Peter Milliman will join us next. Patrick Stevens is here. It's our college lacrosse preview show on GCR.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your EasyPass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your EasyPass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Back in here on GCR's continue along on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is in studio with us. If you haven't picked up the print issue of Press Box, only days left in this one, the annual Best Of issue with Lamar Jackson on the cover. Go get it right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. And as always, you can read it at PressBoxOnline.com in a special issue, as you can find all the content from the Best Of at PressBoxOnline.com/bestof. Joining us now, next up on the hot seat today on the College Lacrosse Preview Show, he is the head coach at Johns Hopkins, coming off a year in which they went 11-5, 5-0 in Big Ten play, ended up making it to the NCAA Tournament quarterfinals. He is Coach Peter Milliman, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always good to chat with you. Thank you so much for taking the time for us this morning. Coach, can you I think you're on mute. There
Sorry
you are.
About that.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Coach. Obviously, a year ago, boy, my gosh, what a thriller that was against Virginia. Does it leave the guys that are back? Do you have like a sense of unfinished business within the program that like we know we can compete to win national championships? Now we just got to go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that an experience like that will stay with you for a long time, forever. I also think it's something that the guys talk about here every year, the opportunity, the responsibility to compete for national championships. That's where we want to be. It's what we want to be doing. And, coming up short in a really, emotionally difficult way, I think is hard to erase. And we are resetting the table here for a new team, new season, and moving on with what we have, not trying to bring anything with us. But I definitely think it's a little bit of fuel for some of those returners and those seniors and fifth years.
A little bit of a shuffle on the coaching staff. Obviously, John Crawley to High Point and Brian Kelly, the new offensive coordinator. Do you anticipate things being substantially different? I would guess that with the continuity that it's not going to be a major overhaul for you or for the players this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. Obviously, we're making some moves in-house, so there's a lot of continuity with players, player development, language. Those things are always going to be really significant when you're going year to year. But any sort of system change, small or large, is going to take an adjustment period, and our guys are working through that. But they're doing a great job. Coach is an outstanding offensive coordinator, so we're excited to get going.
I guess let's stay with the offense then. You lose a couple of guys who have been phenomenal for your program the last couple of years, and Angeles and Garrett Dagnon. I know it's not like you don't bring anybody back, clearly, and Matt Collison, Russell Melendez, but do you get the sense that maybe this isn't necessarily a group that's going to be carried by like one or two alphas, and maybe there's going to be more of a balanced attack moving forward for your program?
Yeah, that's probably accurate. I think Angel and Garrett were really big pieces for a number of years. I mean, this is my 5th year here, and I had those guys for all 4 years up until now. So they made a lot of contributions, but there was some other pieces in that class that graduated. Peshko, Casey, Grimes. There's a lot of other guys that were steady contributors, first line, second line midfielders that we were always working with. So as much as it's the mainstays and the centerpieces of the offense, it's a lot of times it's the contributors, it's the complementary players, it's the who's competing for that second midfield line, things like that.
At the other end, I mean, I got to think Scott Smith is one of the headliners, not just for you guys, but for any defense conversation for this season. Just for those that don't fully appreciate what he's meant to you guys, just can you kind of dive into how valuable he has been for you and will be for you this coming season?
I don't want to get into a position where I overstate anything. I'm excited for Scott and everything he does here, but he's an outstanding young man, a very special guy that you don't get to coach very often. He's a heck of a player. He's a tireless worker. He's dedicated to everything we do here. He's developed into an outstanding leader, and he really sets the tone and pushes guys. And so he's hungry. He's hungry as anybody for an opportunity to compete and get back to the championship and bring something home to Homewood. He is definitely going to be a significant piece of what we do this year.
He is Peter Milliman, head coach at Johns Hopkins. He's with us on our college lacrosse preview show. Coach, obviously from the outside, when you guys brought in Luke Stout as a transfer, I think the assumption would be that he would be the guy on day one. I guess let me go twofold. One, was that the assumption from you guys that he was going to be the guy, or is that still to be determined? And what did you like about Luke Stout that you wanted to bring him into the program?
Sure. I was excited to bring him in to compete, and nothing more than that. I would never promise anybody on their way in here that there was going to be anything more than that. And that's the same communication that goes to all the other guys, the goalie position or anything else. Having multiple years of starting experience, I thought he was a really competitive game day player. I didn't see him every day in practice, but watching film over for the course of a few years, I remember from high school as a recruit, I was really impressed by him. Just like his sense in the net and composure, through the situations and the clears and stuff like that. And so we brought him in here to have an opportunity to compete. We've got a heck of a goalie room right now. Coach Erlin is working with those guys as our former starting goalie, and really building those guys up as young men and as competitors. And we're excited to see this thing go.
Not a bad one to learn from, by the way. Not a bad choice to be able to keep around and have help out.
Mm-hmm. I was lucky with that one. Yeah.
I was going to ask how his transition from playing to coaching has gone since you've known him as long as you have, and just what you've been able to see from him.
He's great. I mean, he's working as director of ops right now, so it's not as much of a coaching role as he would like, obviously, but it's a good transition for him from a student athlete to a professional and learn the business. So he's dealing with a lot of logistics and day-to-days right now. It's some of it's kind of tedious, but he's in there for every film session. He's on the field for every practice. He's around the guys and still in and out of the locker room, which is a massive contribution for us. As a guy that's got multiple years of leadership experience in the net and just around a team. So that's a big one to add to our staff.
Another couple of veterans that you brought in, both from Yale, Patrick Hackler and Jack Montfort. The experience from being in a program like that for as long as they were, what you liked about those guys and how they fit in with this group.
Yeah, they're outstanding young men. Having a handful of years experience over there, very well put together program all the way around. I've gone against them for a number of years when I was in the Ivy League, and just seeing them from a distance here competitively. They recruit tough young men. They play a tough brand of lacrosse. You're going to get guys that are I've got the business end put together. So that's what we were really excited to get some experience. We graduated our top 5 or 6 on that end of the field. So getting guys in here with some game minutes under their belt, whether it was at Hopkins or otherwise, I think was a big addition for us. We've got some good younger guys, but I think the complement of having some experience right next to them really bolsters that group.
You mentioned this being year 5, and obviously a lot has happened over the last 4 years. Bigger rosters, 5 years of eligibility, COVID, all that stuff, and now most of those guys that were playing still in 2020 are out of the college system at this point. Does this feel like kind of the start of whatever the new normal is, or something close to what the new normal is, not just maybe for you guys, but for the entire sport at this stage?
I think that's accurate. It's hard to say that anything in the last few years was conventional. Mm-hmm. Even after you get through the COVID wave of 2 years, it's just so different. You get so many. I mean, we still have a good portion of guys that are coming back, because my first year here I had basically 37 freshmen. So there were some of those guys that didn't play as much or had injuries or whatnot. So there's still some I say trickle down from the initial impact of COVID. So still working through the roster numbers and things like that. But it does start to settle in and feel like this is more of a routine, and some familiarity with guys that I've known for a long time. I loved everybody that I've been working with here, and the opportunity to coach, and all been amazing representatives of this program. It certainly takes a while to get recruits all the way through and know them for a period of time. So it's not for a plus or minus, just the way the process works.
There's a sense of normalcy right up until the NCAA changes eligibility rules here, and in like 5 minutes, that'll be the way that it goes. Coach, I know when you were talking to USA Lacrosse Magazine, a couple names that you brought up that I wanted to get a little more from you. Eric Chick, someone that you felt like maybe is ready to take a next step for this program.
Yeah, he's moved into a role on the offensive end that is really helping us. Whether he's playing at attack or in the midfield, he seems to be competitive and putting himself in the mix. He's doing a great job. He's developed really well. The progress he's made since his arrival has really been impressive. And so, I don't know exactly if I could tell you where or how much or what type of that role would be, but he's put himself in that group right now. And last year he was in the red shirt, scout team category. So it's a pretty significant progress, and I've been really, really proud of his development.
And then unsurprisingly landing another really talented incoming recruiting class. And I know one of the names you brought up was Sean Krogan. That could be someone that could take a step forward. Are there others that you look at in that class and say, these are guys that I'm comfortable that they're probably going to get some playing time for us early on?
Yeah, I mean, the class overall is really impressive. I've been excited to have them. Some of them, Krogan is the one I mentioned because he put himself in the mix pretty quickly and played as well. It played his way into contention maybe a little quicker than I thought or had expected. And so been excited about that one. But I think the whole group overall is going to be in the mix here pretty quick. We still have a pretty good sized roster, but these guys are challenging for spots all across the board. I would say that in the face-off, Joey Hobart and on the defensive end of the field, Tyler I and Reese DeSico are both in the conversation there. Andrew Cook's been really impressive so far, and he's in a pretty deep goalie group to work with.
So I remember a year ago we were having this conversation, and I really wanted to get you to break down instant replay for us, and you let us know, we're not doing that in the Big Ten this year. It's not happening. So I know there's some expansion this year of the replay rules. What is it going to look like in the Big Ten this year as far as replay is concerned?
It's not required, but permitted this year.
Okay.
So everybody I've talked to in the Big Ten is going to do it. We are expecting to have it at every game. Except for some maybe technical issues or however that works out. But most everybody I've talked to is expecting to have the resource available.
And did you were you able to use it in any of the non-conference games last year? Like, did you get a taste of it at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we used it in the tournament, and
right, yeah,
and
of
we had
course, yeah.
a few home games here. Yeah, really, the only games we didn't use it were the Big Ten.
Okay.
Big Ten conference games.
And I know there's a little bit more like referee discretion to go back and look at it this year for certain things, like hits to the head, things along those lines. Coach,
yeah, they refined the language a little bit on it.
Yeah, Coach, if I could just broadly, you know, we talk about obviously all the success that you've had these last couple of seasons. Do you have a sense now for like what the difference is, like where the team needs to be come May in order to make that breakthrough and get back to championship weekend?
From a January 28th standpoint, I don't know exactly what that is yet for what's going to get us, the win on the last round in the quarterfinals and onto the Final Four. But I know the guys are competing and hungry for it, and we're building as well as we can and on a daily basis to put ourselves in contention to get there. I think we need to let that desire bubble to the surface. I think we need to embrace that competitive edge and really put everything we have out there, on game day, but more importantly on the daily basis in the weight room and on the practice field. I think we have the pieces, but we got to execute. We got to make plays when it comes down to it. We got to have some depth into some of our systems and our strategies, and we need to make sure that we're executing fundamental plays on a consistent basis. And I think without those things, we're going to have a tough time expecting to beat the best of the best. But we need to make sure that we're in contention before we can expect to beat them.
Season starts on the road at Denver on Saturday, then the game at Towson next Tuesday night, first home game against Georgetown on February 8th. Coach Peter Milliman, always appreciate you. Looking forward to catching up as the season goes on. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Sure thing. Thanks, guys.
Peter Milliman, Johns Hopkins with us here on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick, I assume the thumbnail for Johns Hopkins is that there's every reason to expect that they're going to be right back into that conversation.
I would fully anticipate that that's going to be a team that we see in the quarterfinals.
Yep.
The question becomes, is there enough there to get beyond the quarterfinals? And I don't say that in a derisive way whatsoever. There's enough.
Yes, the answer to that question could be yes. Right.
Because it very well could be yes.
Right.
I mean, I think that more so 2 years ago, I think, than last year. But I think it applies to last year too. I mean, that was a team that was, sort of more than the sum of its parts. A lot of complementary pieces. Obviously, you have guys like Jacob Angelis and Garrett Degnan from last year's team that were outstanding players. I kind of think Brett Martin's one of the guys that's kind of hard to replace too, the short stick D-Mitty. But I also think that you're talking about one of the best defensemen in the country in Scott Smith. You have one of the best midfielders in the country in Matt Collison. And you have certainly enough pieces on that offense. There are a lot of interchangeable parts, it felt like. Maybe not necessarily Angelis as the quarterback, but there were a lot of guys that you just kept coming in waves. And I would expect that philosophy to continue for Hopkins, even with a new offensive coordinator. So I see that as a team. They went 5-0 in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Maybe they don't go undefeated in the Big Ten this year. Maybe they don't win every single game that they won last year. But they could very easily win some games that they didn't win last season too. So I expect that just based on what we've seen the last couple of years for them to be one of the more consistent, reliable teams. And if you're consistent and reliable, you eventually find a way to break through. So, it's not as if they played poorly for most of that quarterfinal game either, right? I mean, 2 years ago they just ran into the best team in the country. What are you going to do? You're just not. No knock on Hopkins.
A lot of people have gone through that.
Yeah, they just ran into Notre Dame. It wasn't a lot of fun. Last year, they weren't that far away, and they got beat by a guy that they kept calling Mr. May and Connor Schellenberger. Yeah. So, that team was not far from basically facing Maryland again for a shot at playing in the national title game. So I think this is a Hopkins team that's capable of making it to Foxborough. Will it? I don't know, but I don't think it's going to fall very short of it if it does fall short.
We have a moment here, so let's go over some of the big national storylines coming into the season. We'll get to Maryland. I know they're in that conversation. Of course, Notre Dame's been the story for the last couple of years. To you, maybe 3 or 4 big national storylines coming into the start of this season.
Well, I think you've got in the Ivy League, you've got C.J. Kirst in his senior year at Cornell. You've got some older guys at Princeton. You know, it feels like Princeton has exported a top 10 team to other schools via the Ivy League transfer rules or Ivy League eligibility rules the last couple years. But you know, that attack with Kabiri and Coulter Mackesy and a number of other pieces on that roster, I think they're going to be pretty good too. And Yale can't possibly have as many injury issues as it did last year. For them to have gone, I think, 11-3 with seemingly half of their starting lineup getting hurt, including pretty much, you know, their entire non-Matt Brandau attackman group, was pretty impressive. They didn't make the tournament because they lost in the Ivy League tournament, but that all three of those teams I think are plenty capable. I think Harvard's going to be better. I know that's, you know, sort of a running, you know. Of course, you know, everybody expects Harvard to be better, but Harvard should be better, and I think Penn's going to be really good. So, you know, there's all those Ivy League teams that are in the mix. You look at the ACC, and I think this is the year that Syracuse breaks through, and it's been a very methodical thing under Gary Gait. You know, they bottomed out in his first year, and I don't think anybody was too terribly surprised that they weren't all that great. I didn't think they would be, 4-10, but I didn't think they were going to be that good. And then the next year, they got to 7-7 or 8-7 or something like that, and they were really pesky with good teams late in the season. They weren't quite there. And then last year, they got back to the tournament. They won a game. They played that breathtaking third quarter against Towson, and then got to the quarters and lost to an older Denver team. Like that team that Syracuse had was a whole lot of freshmen and sophomores, and that team that Denver had was a lot of seniors and fifth-year guys, and that was really in the end the difference. This is a junior-laden team now at Syracuse, and I think that they finally make it back to championship weekend for the first time since 2013. I expect an orange caravan going across I-90, the Thruway and the Mass Turnpike, to get to Boston that last weekend in May. And then the question of, you know, Notre Dame obviously has a lot to replace, but so do Duke and Virginia. And Duke has a lot to replace, and a team that I think just kind of puzzled a lot of people, especially last year. You know, they were great after losses, and besides that, you just didn't know what team you were going to get. And Virginia obviously has to replace Schellenberger, who we mentioned a little bit earlier, and some other significant pieces. So I look at both of those teams as maybe in a little bit of a reloading mode. I kind of have a preference there for Virginia. I think there's a little bit more to work with. McCabe Millen comes to mind, right? You know, they've still got Ben Wayer, the long pole, with the fabulous personal story as well. And so I think ultimately, I think Virginia's probably in a little bit better spot. Duke's kind of an unknown after having been built around Brennan O'Neill and adding, you know, it feels like everything is like, well, let's grab a couple transfers and all that. And it's kind of an interesting year in Durham, especially after the way last season ended, with allowing Maryland to get back into that game and Maryland escaping up on Long Island in that quarterfinal. So those are some things that certainly stand out to me at this point. But I think there's also going to be plenty of surprises out there as well that maybe we're not thinking about as much at the moment that will be things that we're talking about come April and May.
We continue along here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is in studio with us this morning. Next up on the hot seat, his team, 9-7, 5-3 in the Patriot League a year ago. Lost in the Patriot League semifinals. He is the head coach at the Naval Academy. He is Coach Joe Amplo, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Good morning, guys. Great to be with you this morning.
Coach, before we get to your team, obviously, we'd be remiss as one of our best friends, and I know someone who meant so much to your program. I know maybe you weren't there as long as others and had as much time, but can you put into words what Pete Medhurst has meant to you and to Navy Lacrosse and just how much of a loss this truly is for your program?
Yeah, first of all, you know, to both of you guys, my heart goes out to you. I know how close you both were, and what you did last week for him with the tribute you had were extremely heartwarming and touched a lot of people. So from Navy Lacrosse to both of you, our condolences and our appreciation for doing what you did last week for Pete. And I know you'll continue to help his legacy live on. You know, he became a friend of mine. And I said yesterday to Bill Wagner, Some of my favorite memories I have in my first 5 years here are the few minutes I got to spend with Pete on the field before the games. He had he had a way of comforting me in my most anxious times. It was almost like he was wrapping his arms around me, saying things are going to be okay, and we believe in you. He was such an expert and just wonderful at his craft, but also became an expert in lacrosse. And listening to him on the Big Ten Network and listening to him on the replays of Navy lacrosse, he truly brought our sport to life for so many, and he touched a tremendous amount of people here in Navy athletics, and we are all mourning his loss, and he'll be missed for a long time. Irreplaceable, truly irreplaceable.
It really is incredible, and Patrick brought it up when we were chatting last week. It's incredible to think that this wasn't a sport that he grew up with, it's amazing because it's the same way that you feel. I associate Pete in my life with lacrosse. It's incredible to think that it was something that he didn't even come into until he was an adult.
The questions he would ask me were, always spot on. And it wasn't just us. He knew the opponents really well. He knew the strategies of both teams and kind of what to expect from the game, knowing he did his research. So truly an expert.
Let's talk about your team, Coach, and I think that conversation probably starts with your face-off specialist. Did you know how good Zach was going to be a year ago? And maybe was there a point in the season where you're like, oh my gosh, we got a game changer here in this program?
We felt it. I knew in recruiting this kid was a warrior, but you never know how that's going to translate to our level. We felt it in the fall that the kid was just going to bring our compete level to another stratosphere. And then he had to deal with an injury, and our concern through last year was he going to be able to manage it? And he did. Early on in the season, I thought we felt like, all right, we got something pretty good here, and I think there was a couple of times during the year where he didn't perform very well. And then the next few times after that, he just spiked up, and that resiliency, I think he learned a lot from. He's a tough out. He's consistently tough to beat. And I think that's the best thing about him. I don't think he's going to overwhelm many people technically, but any face-off guy or unit that's going against him knows it's going to be a battle. And that to me, that's Navy lacrosse in a nutshell. And he captures that in the way he plays.
Third year in a row with a different offensive coordinator. Ken Brochar comes in from High Point. What kind of stood out about him as you were looking to make that hire after Dave Cottle had stepped in admirably last year, and what sort of impact do you think he's having on a team on a group that it has a lot of new faces for you this year?
Yeah, number one was his strong desire to want to be here. That came across extremely evidently in his interview process, and then second to that, my evaluation of him was his ability to develop talent and identify the right types of talent. You look over the course of his career and every stop he's been, the programs have gotten better and the players have overachieved relative to what most people think they could be. And I think those are our ingredients here. We're going to recruit top-end kids. Sometimes we're going to get them, sometimes we're not, but it's our ability to develop players at a faster rate than our peers are going to allow us to be in the conversations that you were having earlier about the top teams in the sport. And that's truly what we have to be great at. And I think Kenny has proven over the course of time that he's great at it. And in a short time here, he's made an impact already on the player development model that we've got in place.
And it certainly sounds like with an offense that brings back only one of the top six scorers from last year in Henry Tolker, that's a good match for what you are right now as well as what you might be moving forward.
Yeah, look, we're unproven on that end, Patrick. There's no doubt. But we've got some really good kids who believe in the system and believe in each other, and I think we're going to be more of a team on that end of the floor than we've ever been, and that's exciting to me. I don't think we're going to have that, perceived superstar mentality, and not that we wish that differently. I love that, but to me, I'd rather be a great team. And I think we've got the chance to be a great offensive team this year at some point.
He is Coach Joe Amplo from Navy, and he's with us here on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. That said, Coach, Jack Flaherty, is that someone that maybe can take a next step in sort of helping to fill that void of all of the points and the goals that are long?
Yeah, you would hope so. He's a junior. He's been around and he's been on the first midfield, the second midfield, played some man up, been in and out of kind of a primary spot at the midfield, but been mostly a secondary option for us the first 2 years. So if we're doing our player development right, you would expect a junior who's played, a significant amount of time, but not unbelievably impactful time. You would expect him to take that next step, So I would hope that he's a guy we can count on consistently through the year.
Jackson Bonnet's one of the major graduation losses for you guys, but A.J. Marsh, a guy that was an all-conference caliber player last year, I think second-team all-league. Just give me a sense of what you think he can do as he heads into his sophomore year, and also how you feel like that defense sizes up at this point.
Yeah, I think our defense has always been our strength here at the Naval Academy. John Orson does a wonderful job with that unit. They're a team down there. They've got a culture. They've got an identity, and they have standards. AJ certainly is the most talented. You can use him down low. We can use him up top. We can use him in the ride on the wings of faceoffs. He's got a dynamic ability with the ball on his stick, and he's got vision to run the floor in transition. All of those things exist for him. But I still think Ian McGullum's our best defender. When it comes down to locking someone down and being able to play good, solid defense, I think Ian McGullum, who's our captain, has turned into a really, really solid defender. And I think you're going to start to see some of our short sticks emerge as guys that people talk about, because we got a pretty good stable of those guys.
Along those lines, I mean, I was going to bring up that group because everybody thought, when I thought of you guys last season, Jackson Peters was one of the first guys that came to mind. Who's the next in line, given the number of quality short sticks that Navy has had over the years?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 5 guys we're going to roll out there this weekend, we think. I think Jack Norton, who's a senior, again, player development, he's turned into what I think is one of the better guys out there. And then just behind him are 2 young guys, Justin Queen, who's really developed nicely. He's just a world-class athlete. Josh Nagy is a freshman who, quite frankly, could be the best athlete I've ever been around on a lacrosse field, aside from Doug Shanahan. He is just truly gifted athletically and owns the position. He's a young man from Calvert Hall. And just next to those guys, Chad Connolly and Graham Parker are 2 younger guys that have stepped up. So we feel really good about that unit. We trust them. And I think, we've proven that we're able to develop those guys at that position to be pretty good.
By the way, I assume it doesn't hurt to have a pretty experienced and solid goalie behind all of this.
Yeah, Dan Daly's done a good job for us. He was pretty consistent last year, and hopefully he could take that next step. Again, as a junior in the program and getting some time last year and playing consistent minutes, you would hope he would take that next step in performance as an individual player.
Coach, I wonder, obviously you guys have been right there in the mix the last couple of seasons. Do you have a sense for what that, I don't know, special sauce is, what the missing piece is from going from right in the mix to being able to win the Patriot League and get back to playing in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, look, we all of us here would have wished that we've taken that next step maybe a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
Not that we've been underachieving, but we've just been achieving.
Yeah,
and
right,
I think our
right
guys,
there. Yeah, obviously, right there.
And there's been some spikes of success, but just not. It's consistency, Glenn, and truly, it's consistency. And if I had the direct answer of what the special sauce was, I think that would be wonderful. But I don't. I think we've just got to push to be more consistent. And now it's the first time every guy except one on this roster I've recruited. So there are types of kids, and not that was a big difference in the past, but now they've been around and they've seen all the ups and downs and how we handle them. And the standard of what we expect is ingrained in these guys. I do think we're probably a little bit younger with our talent, just depth, but I think the consistency of our behavior has now been seen over 4 years. We just got to perform more consistently on game days.
I feel like the other thing, too, about the league, maybe it's not national championship, but it's almost been weird. It feels like the league has kind of risen to where there's just more teams that are competitive within the league year in and year out than maybe there were 5-6 years ago.
And look, there's great coaches in the league. They all do a wonderful job, and I think it's an underrated league in the sense that we can all compete nationally, but we're not talked about as often nationally. Some of us are. some of us aren't, and I think we all take that personally. And I think that allows us on any given day to compete with those teams. And, if we spike at the right time towards the end of the year, any one of us can make a run at this thing, because I think it's a league where there's a lot of good players, but mostly there's a lot of good teams who have to fight their way through this league to be successful.
Coach, obviously the season is getting underway for Navy on Saturday down at High Point, and then they'll host Iona the following Saturday in Annapolis for the first home game of the year. Looking forward to seeing you and your team throughout the course of the season. Really appreciate you taking the time for us, as always, to do this. Thanks so much for hopping on the preview show once again, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Have a great year. Talk to you soon.
It's Joe Amplo, head coach at Navy. Patrick, your thumbnail on the Midshipmen.
I think I could see Navy playing in a lot of 10-8 and 9-7 and 11-9 type of games. There's going to be some time needed to develop some of those guys on the offense, but I think the defense will be the strength, especially if that short stick group is as good as Joe Amplo believes it to be. You've got Daly in the cage, you've got Marsh and McGollum on close defense, and Navy's going to have the ball a fair bit with Zach Hayashi for the most part. I think one of the great head-to-head matchups this season that you can just circle on the calendar, and since it's in Annapolis this year, get your tickets in advance, will be Will Coletti from Army and Zach Hayashi from Navy at the Face-Off X in that Army-Navy game in mid-April. So I don't see any reason why Navy can't be the team that makes a run of the Patriot League title. I don't think that's guaranteed because Lehigh and BU and Colgate and Loyola.
Well, it's what I just like. It's not. These aren't the Patriots League's not winning national championships right now, but the balance of the league.
The league is better. Like Lafayette's gotten better over time. That's a team that you used to never think about at all, and now I'm not sitting here saying they're going to win the Patriot League, but that's a team that you have to account for. That if you play poorly, they're going to pound you, and if you play decent, they still have a chance to beat you. And it used to be that was quite candidly a game that you could count on winning pretty much every single year. So. And that's a credit to the folks up in Easton for having done a good job with that program. So I think in that league you don't know what to expect because there isn't anybody that's that much better than anybody else. I mean, I think Army's probably the best team in that league this season, but that doesn't mean that Navy can't win just an absolute scrap against them like what you usually get in that game. There's no reason that a Colgate can't be the best team in that. They're just simply you can make an argument for probably 6, maybe 7 of the teams in that league to be able to be the one standing on Selection Sunday. So, no reason Navy can't be, and having a great face-off guy in Hayashi is a good start. But they're also going to have to get that offense developed because there are real questions there as to who is going to emerge as someone capable of scoring 20 or 30 goals in a season. I mean, they had, 6 or 7 10-goal scorers last season, and only one of them is back.
Tolker, yeah.
So now he had 30.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that's worth pointing out is that was a team that shot only 26.7%. So whoever it is that's playing needs to be more efficient than that for them to be able to achieve the consistency that Joe Amplo wants to see.
All right, so slate, we're going to bump John Tillman, who's going to join us at 11:45. We're going to bump that back to 11:50 is when he's going to join us, which is quite all right. It gives us a minute here. Griffin, is your tidbit today lacrosse related?
Of course it is.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and do that now while we have a minute? I guess we could do. You want to do 2 minutes quickly on the Maryland basketball, just because people normally tune in. You want to do tidbit first? All right, we'll do that first.
Right.
So tidbit is brought to you today by the CIAA tournament.
Oh, awesome! That means Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament back to CFG Bank Arena this spring, February 25th through March 1st. Get your tickets. They are available now. Ticketmaster.com. Again, Ticketmaster.com for your tickets to the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th through March 1st, right here in Baltimore.
Yeah, less than a month away.
Yeah.
All right, now.
Let's do. All right, so Notre Dame, they made their 7th Final Four last spring, and of course did go on to win their second national title as well in as many years. They became the 10th team with 7 Final Four appearances. Can you name? There are 9.
This isn't going to be difficult. He's going to get them.
All right, well then get them in order then. Most Final Four appearances.
Most Final Four appearances, Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins. They are tied for the most.
You would have Maryland.
Maryland and Hopkins both have 29 Final Fours.
You would have Syracuse.
Syracuse is third. Tied for third. There's one other with 26 Final Fours as well.
You would have Virginia.
Yep, Virginia. 26 as well.
You would have, and I'm not sure I'm going in order now, but Cornell would be on that list.
Cornell would be on that list. 14, tied for 5th.
Princeton.
Princeton, first time you're out of order. 11, they are on the list, though.
Duke is on that list.
Duke is on the list. 14, tied with Cornell and one other team.
North Carolina.
North Carolina is correct. 14 Final Fours for North Carolina.
And Navy would be the other one.
Navy would be the other one. 8 Final Fours. Well,
so let me be honest, right? Like if I had played that game, it's possible. Because in fairness, some of those are the obvious ones. Like, and I would have guessed. I might have guessed Notre Dame instead of either Cornell or Navy.
Well, I was. If you hadn't been told.
Right, correct. If he had just given that to me and said, Glenn, can you get this list? Some of those, Hopkins, Maryland, Duke, Virginia, Princeton, Syracuse, would have been obvious. It's possible that I would have turned to Notre Dame, and that would have been where I got tripped up. That I wouldn't have gotten a 100% on that because, it's just possible.
Do you want to recycle since we have a lot of time still?
We're good. We got other things we can do. But I mean, do you have something that you
well, Brian Pell helped me with one last year. We did the most the top 8 goal scorers in Maryland lacrosse history. No.
This sounds like when I look at the list of guys that are left for me to go over on the Patrick Stevens game, where I just look at them like, no, we're not.
You want to go find one of those?
We're not. Oh, I had a couple that were going to be next. I think I'm going to start turning to 3-team guys here in a minute. So the rules have always been for the Patrick Stevens game. For those that don't know,
I don't think you've attacked those early '80s guys.
You have no idea. I have.
You never gave me like Rick Honeycutt or anything.
Oh, Rick Honeycutt was definitely on the list. Hang on a second.
Rick Honeycutt.
Hang on
Is
a
that
second.
Vance Honeycutt?
No, stop. You're going to embarrass yourself. Where we pull it up here. Because I had 3 that I was prepared. Because remember, we were going to do it last week, and then, of course, we got the awful news. The 3 that I had for last week were Bud Black.
Okay.
Bud Black, of course, obviously combining as a pitcher and as a manager. But as a manager, no crossover whatsoever. No crossover.
So it's like 5 teams for
it's more than that. It's like 7 teams. Five teams as a player, 2 teams as a manager.
Well, as a manager, it's San Diego and Colorado.
Of course.
And as a player, it's Cleveland and San Francisco and Kansas City and Toronto.
And
I believe he was a Yankee at the very beginning.
No, it's not the Yankees. It was the very beginning,
Okay.
1981.
1981. Gosh.
By the way, Bud Black never made an all-star game. There is no reason why anyone would know all of these teams for Bud Black.
Was he a twin at the start? Was that what it was?
Was the Mariners.
The Mariners
is where he started. But hang on, I don't even know how many games it was. Let me pull it up. Just for the absurdity of it. It was for 2 games.
Okay.
As a Seattle Mariner. To be fair, you got Toronto, and Toronto was 3 games.
Okay.
So how? I have no earthly idea why you would get Bud Black. The next that was on the list was Ivan Calderon.
Ivan Calderon.
Yeah. This is what we get to. I get to this where I'm
This
like,
is 4 teams?
Are we doing this or not? Are we really doing
Is this 4 teams?
Ivan is, 4 teams.
Well, I know definitely the White Sox.
Yes.
And definitely the Expos.
Those are the 2 that I got.
Okay. So are we talking about like one at the beginning and one at the end?
One for 3 seasons at the beginning, from 84 to 86. And then in 93, he started somewhere and then went back to Chicago.
Okay. So was he a Mariner at the start?
He was a Mariner at the start. I did not have any recollection of that. I actually had a loose recollection of this from 93, but probably only
from 93 and then went back to the
I think
White
I
Sox.
specifically had a baseball card where he was.
Maybe the Mets.
Not the Mets, but kind of that ilk.
The Red Sox. Okay.
Red Sox, exactly right for Ivan Calderon. And then the other one that I had for last week was a current player, and Make sure he's on a roster right now. Yeah, he is. I don't know why I thought for a second. 3-time All-Star, 5 teams for Sonny Gray.
Sonny Gray. Oakland.
Yep.
The Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, right?
Yes. There was a stop between the Yankees and Minnesota.
There was a stop between the Yankees and Minnesota in Cincinnati.
That's
correct?
right.
And then wherever he's plying his trade now, which is
got there last year.
Got there last year. Was it St. Louis?
St. Louis, indeed. 5 for 5 on Sonny Gray. So, by the way, that's absurd. What you just did on Bud Black, Yvonne Calderon, and Sonny Gray.
So
ridiculous.
Sonny Gray was part of the most depressing staff ever assembled. There was a staff in Oakland that had Sonny Gray, Kendall Graveman, Sean Doolittle, and Ryan Dull.
Wow. Wow. That is a lot. I am really in a tough spot. Hang on, I got to pull up and tell you, make sure that I've done Honeycutt, because I am certain that I've seen that as on the list. And
should we do the guy that's dominating the headlines today?
Yeah, we did it on April 11th of 2019 or whatever. Like,
maybe it's time to go into reruns or something like that.
I was debating whether we go to reruns or again. I think the next step will be 3-team guys.
Okay.
Like I think that's my rule at first was 5 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we were running out of those guys, I included 4 teams.
Or we can just go, here's one you can do.
Uh-huh.
Here's a scenario that actually helps with the audience as well. Mm-hmm. You pick a former Oriole. Any former
Oriole. Like if we did
now I'm not saying choose Francisco Melendez,
but like,
who happened to be a Philly and a Giant as well as an Oriole.
I barely remember Francisco Melendez. How about Jeff Rebele, for example?
Jeff Rebele. How many teams for Jeff Rebele?
5 teams. That's news to me.
All right.
I only bring up Jeff Rebele. I don't know if I've told the story. He's stayed in touch with me regularly over the years. So just check in and say, hey, Glenn, how are you? Like, great guy. Couldn't be a better guy. And also, as we all remember, hit a home run off of Randy Johnson in the playoffs.
So definitely a Twin.
Yes.
Was a Dodger, right?
He was a Dodger.
He was a Met.
Not a Met.
He wasn't?
No, it was not a Met.
You know who I'm getting him confused with? Jeff McKnight.
Oh, Jeff McKnight was Met. Yeah,
he was.
Yeah, he was a Met.
So 2 other teams for Rebele.
For some reason, I remember the one at the end. I don't know why. He spent the 2000 season somewhere and the 2003 season somewhere.
I don't know, the Cubs maybe.
No, but yeah. Kansas City in 2000, Pittsburgh in 2003. Okay. But okay, I'm good with that rule as well. We can open it up to guys that played for the Orioles at some point and played for other teams. We can, but never made an All-Star game. Because if they had made an All-Star game like Jeffrey Hammonds, we would have already used them.
Jorge Julio's a great one.
Jorge Julio was never an All-Star. Dude, it got so bad.
He wasn't an All-Star.
But it got so bad in some of those years that you do have to sit back and think of whether one of these, like, did somehow Slappy Willis Roberts end up getting an All-Star appearance somewhere along the lines? I don't think so, no. But, yeah, some of those guys you just never know. All right, we'll do that. We will do that in order to expand the game moving forward, and we will add those guys to the list next week. All right, we got to take one more break, right?
We do, yes.
We'll take one more break. When we come back in, John Tillman and Shawn Nadelen from Maryland and Towson, last 2 on the hot seat. Patrick's in studio. It is our annual college lacrosse preview show.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special Best of 2024 issue. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, as Bo Smolka profiles what the quarterback means to the community beyond the football field. Also inside, we celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always read the entire issue and find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
Hey, the Brigance Brigade Foundation is holding their annual Winter Soiree coming up on February 21st at Martin's West. We, of course, know the Brigance Brigade. They do incredible work in the honor of Baltimore football legend O.J. Brigance. The mission of the Brigance Brigade Foundation is to improve the quality of life for those that are fighting ALS and their families by providing access to support services, needed equipment, and resource guidance. And this is a very important event every year on their calendar, their Winter Soiree, February 21st at Martin's West. Great food, live music, dancing. Jimmy Charles is going to be there. And also the great auction that they have every year. You can get your tickets right now by going to brigancebrigade.org. That's brigancebrigade.org. Single tickets available, tables available for the Brigance Brigade Foundation's Winter Soiree coming up on February 21st. Let's do it in reverse order. Why don't you go ahead and give me your, before we chat with John Tillman, why don't you give me your thumbnail on Maryland lacrosse?
There's some questions there, but also that's a team that really excited people in May. It's one of those situations where you go, well, they probably didn't have the regular season they wanted to have, but they're going to be remembered a lot better for what they were because they won 3 games in May and made it to Memorial Day. So, the two big questions for them, beyond simply having some offensive pieces to replace. You lose the USILA Player of the Year in Ajax Zapatello. You lose Luke Weirman, who was sort of your magic bullet for the last 3 years or so. On face-offs, and what do you do? Those are kind of the big questions there for them. But at the same time, there's nobody that's more consistent than Maryland. So just churning out 10-win seasons year after year after year. The last time, not counting the 2020, the COVID year, the last time that Maryland didn't win 10 games in a season was 2002.
Jesus.
So that is an absolute mark of consistency over multiple coaches, by the way. Just super reliable year in and year out, and there's, I think there should be a level of, confidence that Maryland will figure things out, even if they are dealing, for example, with a challenging schedule.
Right.
That they always do and all that. You would fully expect them to be very much in the Big Ten mix, very much in the hunt to be hosting a tournament game, very much a danger to make a multi-round run once the NCAA tournament begins.
Let's find out a little bit more about that Maryland team, as he is, of course, the head coach of the Terrapins, coming off a year in which they did make that magical run to Memorial Day before falling short in the championship game. He is Coach John Tillman, and he is with us now here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you so much for taking the time for us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you guys. Appreciate it.
Coach, we talk about that in May, and I know it's a different group, right? But where did it come from? What did that group find? And for the players that are back from that run, how do they build off of that? How do they use that to move forward into this season?
Yeah, a credit to the guys and the staff. Super inconsistent last year. I think when the team played well, we could compete with everybody. And then when we weren't good, it was pretty bad. And that just being honest and being real. So, trying to get guys to be more consistent certainly was a lot that went into towards the end of the year. You lose a game, and then you got to kind of look at yourself, I think individually and collectively. That where you are, and that it's almost over. But we did have a lot of discussions with the guys, and we were very open-minded. We trust our guys. Our guys are very invested here. And we looked at everything, to be honest, guys. We looked at how we warmed up before the game. We looked at how we practiced. We made strategic, big picture changes. We made personnel changes, certainly on the offensive end, because that was where I think we had the most opportunity to change. Some guys playing attack, some people playing in midfield. And then, obviously Luke gets hot there. And that certainly helps. We don't do what we do without Luke, for sure. You just look at that Duke game. I felt like they were really controlling that game in the first quarter, first half, and we were able to kind of hang in there. I think Logan made some important saves, and Luke scores 2 goals, but also kept getting us possessions and let us hang around, and then again made some in-game adjustments, and then finally kind of got things clicking at the end. So a lot of variables in there. Again, lucky to have kids that kept believing and stuck together, and coaches that just kept coaching. But a good lesson for all of us, right? Always fight till the end. Never, stop looking at potential changes that maybe will be able to help you. Be open-minded. And guys, hey, just if we need you to do something different, jump on board. Be willing to maybe change up so that the larger sum of everything gets better.
On the, you mentioned Luke and his play, and I know I mentioned it a little bit before you got on the air here. It's been such a weapon for you guys to have him the last few seasons, and now kind of dealing with life without him. How is that group kind of looking? And I'm assuming you're simply at this point just trying to get guys acclimated and get them some experience as much as anything else. But just what are your hopes for your face-off unit this year?
Yeah, we have 4 guys down there, and they're all very athletic. We have a lot of confidence in those guys, just the way they're wired. Most of those 4 guys, they were not just face-off guys in high school, so kind of cut very much out of the Luke Weirman the cloth. When he came out of high school, he was a guy for Westchester Henderson that did a little of everything. So the guys that we do have, they actually, I think Mitch Lloyd was a high school All-American who played offense. You look at Jonah Carrier, he was the Offensive Player of the Year in Section 5. Sean Creeder, who's a face-off guy, is a sophomore for us. I think he had 50 goals his senior year. He played man up and faced off. And Shea Keithler was the Ohio Player of the Year. And two-sport athlete, super strong, tough. And what you take a little bit of stock in is, maybe they didn't do it on game day, but for anybody that's been here, they had to go against Luke every day. They were able to kind of watch what he did and what was his mindset, what were his practice habits, what were his pregame routines. So I do think there's some value to that, but obviously, you got to get out there and do that. Part of the year has been to try to get guys ready. In the fall, we scrimmaged our alums. We went to Philly. We scrimmaged St. Joe's and Lehigh. So we got, 3 opportunities there. We had Cornell at the end of the fall. So that was a 4th. And now we've gone against Duke and Georgetown. So, those guys have gone against 6 different groups just to get them and not just the face-off guys, but everybody acclimated. And I'm sure I'm like anybody else that's been on here. We're still trying to figure it out, guys in roles and sets and combinations, trying to manage pregame injury or preseason injuries, which, the weather has been the weather. So I think that's probably been a topic of conversation with my peers more than ever. Just, how do you treat preseason? Because, we're 4 days from a game now, and the best ability is availability. How are you treating those 2 weeks? You got a lot to do, but you also want your best guys out there. So it is a tricky balance to find that sweet spot of preparation and getting them in shape, but yet not overdoing things and losing guys because you're pushing too hard.
A year ago, so much was made about the fact that you were able to make this run without having like a Logan Wisnauskas, a Bernhardt, maybe your traditional like Tewaarton finalist type of goal scorer. You do bring back key offensive pieces, right? Like Braden Erksa and Eric Spanos. Do you feel like it's likely going to be a similar story where it's going to be more of a balanced and maybe committee approach, or could you see some of these guys that have a little bit of experience maybe stepping up and becoming more of those alpha types?
I think both, to be honest. You're certainly going to lean on, some guys that have been here. And, you kind of look at, you mentioned Braden, who was the Big Ten Rookie of the Year. I thought Spanos played great down the stretch, and those are pretty important guys for us. Daniel Kelly has had a great career with us, does a lot for us. He scored some big goals, down the stretch for us as well. So you have a nucleus there, and then we have a lot of new parts, but again, it's nice to have some veteran pieces. I think those guys, they're ready if need be to step up, but I don't think they need to be the guy all the time. And I think that's helpful for us. Even in 22, and 21, like that was very much ball movement predicated. The ball really didn't die. Certainly, you had some guys like a Jared that, could win just about any matchup, which is a rarity. But even Wisnauskas was not a just get the ball and go to. He was definitely making his, mark, doing it a lot of different ways, keeping the ball spinning, finding good spots, but the ball didn't die. And I think that's the way we've tried to play, especially since 2017. We were definitely a little more methodical with that group, but that suited Matt and Colin and the group that we had. But since then, we've definitely been more movement-centric, ball movement-centric, just trying to kind of play a little bit more open-minded style and kind of like a positionless lacrosse. And then trying to tailor it each year to what these guys do well. It's great to have Michael Phipps here and have a whole fall with him. A lot of the reason why he's here, one, he's a Terp, but two, just knowing what he's preached at Georgetown and Navy and the places he's been, I think he's definitely, when you look at the way we want to play, he's kind of had that same mindset of, making sure the ball moves and not just relying on one guy. I feel like that's a lot easier to defend.
You guys have had the number 1 jersey become something of a program symbol here over the last several years. And Logan McNaney, the goalie who was obviously part of your last national title team, gets to wear it this year. Just what kind of went into that decision, and just how's Logan at this point as he heads into his 5th season?
Yeah, a lot more went into that than I think people realize. We really just needed to let that play out. We weren't sure what was going to happen. And the reason being is, Logan finished up last year with an injury. He had surgery on his hand not long after the season. So he kind of got through last year, with an injury, got that taken care of. But then his knee didn't feel right, the one he had surgery on a couple years ago. So he got that scoped. So that meant he was not going to play a lot this fall. He came back really our last week, the week of Cornell. So the bulk of our work really went to Brian Ruppel, and Brian has been tremendous. To be honest, coming into the spring, we felt like we did have 2 guys that were beyond capable. Brian played really well against Cornell. He played well in the other scrimmages. And in fairness to Brian, and then stay consistent with our culture, we could not just go, okay, well, Logan's back, he's going to start. To me, we had to let this thing play out. So Logan did play, a little bit against Cornell, and then he was in practice for the last month. And then we've been back about 4 weeks now. So it's been really tight. really tight. And to be honest, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd say we don't have an answer yet. And that's how well Brian's played. So, we'll see. We're going to go with Logan to start, but Brian is right there, and that's a compliment to him. And it was hard because if Brian is the starter, then, we probably don't make that decision just because of, the history of the number and such. And that's not taking anything away from anybody. But we felt like if Logan did win the job and played well, that was something we would explore. And Logan did play very well in our scrimmages. He was very good against Georgetown, and that kind of led us to our decision. We certainly had other options. We mentioned some of the other guys on offense, and there are some other guys that would be great candidates. I think the guys that have worn that jersey, they haven't seeked it out. They, kind of appreciated the history of the number, but weren't defined by it. They weren't jockeying for it. I think even we had to kind of convince Logan Wisnauskas and Connor Kelly and Jared Bernhardt to wear it. They were, the response was, well, I'm not a number guy. I just like playing lacrosse, and kind of getting them to understand, what that number means and the type of people they were. I thought they were great fits. And, as a staff, we always make these decisions. So I value our staff's opinion a lot, and everybody kind of felt like it was the right decision with Logan.
Maryland lacrosse coach John Tillman with us on our college lacrosse preview show. Coach, if I could run by a couple of newcomers to this program, and one that's really fascinating to me is Jack Dowd, who scored 150 goals in his career at Salisbury, acknowledging that's the D3 level. He's a goal scorer. We know that. Like, he's capable, but how difficult and is that transition, and is a reasonable expectation for someone who was one of the best players in the country at a lower level?
Yeah, I don't think people really realize the when guys transition into your program, it's not just plug and play. There's definitely a lot that goes into it. You're plopping a guy down into a new environment, a new locker room. We certainly spend a lot of time with these guys, and I don't know if vetting is the right word, but we definitely, do our due diligence when, we bring guys in here, and we want them to do the same with us and kind of understand, what we do and why, and make sure it's a good fit. Jack, when we met him, we had heard so many good things from so many different people. And he's been fantastic since he's gotten here. High character guy, very humble guy, very coachable. A high IQ guy. When you think 150 goals, you think he just shoots and shoots and shoots. Great vision, excellent passer, good feel for the game, lets the game come to him. He's very two-handed. So he's been easy. Certainly, trying to figure out who should be playing with who and what they do well and where we would want them to be. That's been the fun challenge of it, because I do think as a coach, each year is different, and trying to figure out how do we set these kids up for success? How do we bring out the best in them? To me, that's a real fun part of it. We try not to just go, all right, this is what we do. You guys have to fit into our system. I think we're pretty open-minded that we just want to adapt and figure out, all right, what do these guys feel most comfortable doing? How can we get them to play fast and free and bring out the best in them? And Jack's been great. He really has. Been nicked up a little bit here and there, but he's looking good. He's been great. So I'm really excited for him this year.
John, I wanted to ask you about Pete Medhurst, who died last week, and you obviously had the chance to work with Pete a bit while you were at Navy, and also with some of his BTN broadcasts. And what are kind of some of your memories of him, and just what a lacrosse guy he ultimately was over the years, and just how important he was for the sport.
Yeah, sad news. Having and gotten to know him, and just through obviously the lacrosse aspect, but you're driving around on a Saturday, and you throw a Navy football game on, and you hear that voice, and just there's a sense of comfort there and familiarity. Just a tragic loss, just in terms of the type of human being he was. A great guy, humble, all about the kids. Really when he did a game, it was super positive. There wasn't any, sometimes, you can hear people be negative or critical and things like that. Just was a real pro, and loved the game. And a guy we're going to miss. I know he's done some other games and, was just knew his stuff when he got on the pre-call with him and kind of talked to him about the game. He had done his homework. He knew the right questions, who was playing with who. And, when he did the game, just, called it the way you'd want, right down the middle. A guy we're going to miss on so many levels, again, as a friend, as a person, but part of the lacrosse community.
There's no question about that. A very, very special human being to boot. Season begins for Maryland. They'll be at home this Saturday against Richmond at noon. Then up here in Baltimore next Saturday, February 8th at Loyola to take on the Greyhounds. Coach John Tillman, appreciate you. Know you got a busy day down there with Media Day. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning. We really appreciate you doing this as always.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
John
Have
Tillman,
a good day.
You as well. John Tillman, head coach at Maryland, with us here on our college lacrosse preview show. Just because it's come up a couple times, and of course Patrick and I were chatting right as we got the news. And if you haven't seen, there will be public service for Pete Medhurst this Saturday down in Anne Arundel County, which of course was home for Pete Medhurst. And if you'd like to, you can go to I think you could just search it and you get the information there. And I know they had a really special night for him at Southern High School on Friday night, his alma mater. But this Saturday, starting the visitation at 10 a.m. at Chesapeake Christian Fellowship. And then immediately following the visitation will be the service for Pete Medhurst. So I don't want to go too far because I'll end up getting emotional again all over. But if you want to help celebrate the life, and I think his family could still use the lift, and that GoFundMe is still up, and certainly anything that you could do for his family, I think would go a really, really long way. We're not going to do a full tubular, but if you would, Griffin, go ahead and let's hit that before we chat with Shawn Nadelen to wrap up today's show. Go ahead and hit that, and I'll just give you a highlight or two.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
No local college basketball teams in action tonight. Big Ten hoops, Minnesota, Michigan State at 8 on Peacock. A good one, Kentucky, Tennessee, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Everything else college basketball-wise you can find by going to glennclarkradio.com. The Capitals take on the Flames tonight at 9 on Monumental. TNT's got Lakers, Sixers at 7:30, Bucks, Trailblazers at 10, and Senior Bowl practice. That's very important. This afternoon at 3 o'clock on the NFL Network. It's one of those nights. You'll be listening to Rita and Glenn on 105.7 The Fan. So.
I'll be at Georgetown St. John's.
Ooh, there is that. That's at 6:30 on Fox Sports 1. And again, non-sports stuff as well you can find at glennclarkradio.com. All right, last up this morning, as they just came off the practice field over at Towson, he is the head coach of the Tigers, reigning CAA champions. He is Coach Shawn Nadelen, and he is with us on our college lacrosse preview show. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for fitting me in.
Coach, can you kind of put through just the words of what last season, and I know that you had bigger goals, and my God, the competitive nature your team showed at Syracuse, what you could have done, but just having a year like that, getting back to the tournament, winning the CAA, what did all of that mean to you and to the Towson program?
That was an exciting, obviously, experience and year for that group, the 2024 group. Something that they, set their sights on and were able to achieve. The senior class was a small group. We graduated 6 guys last year, and they did a tremendous job, making sure that we were pretty on point all year, from the fall through the spring. And some pretty high level guys, in that group with Colby Bars and Nick DeMeo and Reese Potter, that were, big difference makers, for us, and their maturity and leadership, really shine through down the stretch for us in the CAA and into the tournament.
With such a small graduating class, that means you have a fair bit of continuity this season. Have you seen this group kind of, I don't want to say start where it left off, because that was a pretty high spot to be in, but to start off in practice, at least, in a better place than you would typically see a team playing in January?
There's more experience for sure, Patrick, coming back. So that lends us to the opportunity to, again, be able to move a little bit quicker with some things as far as install, even though we brought in a large freshman class too. So we gotta, we've had to balance that out, make sure we're not moving too fast for those guys where they're just sinking, but being able to make sure that we're developing everybody. You got the fresh guys and new guys that are very simple and fundamental, and the older guys that we can be a little bit more nuanced and create a little bit more with those guys. So the experience has been helpful. The rate at which we've been able to do things has been good. We thought we'd be able to move a little bit faster, but recognize that, sometimes, moving too fast or in a hurry, as Coach Wooden would say, is not really the right way to go about it. So, making sure that we're, doing what we're capable of doing at a high level and being very efficient in our process.
Coach, I wonder, and I know you're probably going to be like, hey man, we're not doing that. That sounds like rat poison. But given everything that you've accomplished as a program, and given how much you brought back, do you guys talk openly about bigger goals, about what more this team can accomplish this year?
Yeah, I mean, this team hasn't accomplished anything yet.
Yeah.
Right. The program, yes, we've, like any program out there that has had, a good deal of success, we're fortunate to, be able to do that and say that. But, each year's its own entity, and this year's is no different. So, this team, the 2025 team, hasn't accomplished anything yet. So, we don't necessarily talk about it every day or anything like that. Our focus is always in regards to putting our best on the field each day and making sure that we're retaining and able to grow and develop and build off of each day, and challenge ourselves there, challenge each other. So in regards to, to past successes, we look at it more as how is the experience going to help us, get better? What are some things that we want to be aware of, in regards to lessons learned along the way, not just last year, but previous years. We got seniors that, haven't been able to, be that successful and have, as successful years as we did last year. So, learning from all of that and making sure that we avoid as many obstacles. And if we do face the obstacles, how to navigate through them together and be able to be better.
Mikey Weishauer comes back off a 42-goal season as a sophomore, along the lines of growing and developing and improving. Just what's the next step for him as a guy that figures to be, again, one of the top midfielders of the country?
It's really two-sided for him, and he's taken on the responsibility. So there's personal growth, and then there's athletic and skill development, lacrosse growth, so to speak. So for Mikey, it's, he's taken on a lot of ownership in how he can grow as a young man, and, his maturity and how he goes about his day-to-day, just process and life, which has been neat for him to go down that path and to find more within himself. And he's sought help and obviously not just us, but other resources. And it's been neat to see him really dive into that, knowing that, and believing in himself that he knows he's capable of so much more, and he wants to get there, not just for himself, but for the team. And then there's the development as a lacrosse player. His IQ needs to continue to improve. As people have seen, he can be a heck of a playmaker. There's no doubt about that. He knows what to do when the ball's in his stick, but how can he position himself or position the team offensively better when it's not in his stick, and being able to be dangerous, with and without the ball. So, expanding his game from the IQ, from the understanding, as well as, being more efficient in his shooting and his skill in passing and ground balls.
How nice is it when you have the specialist positions, right? Like at the faceoff dot with Constantinides, Luke Downs in goal. What does that do, for the entire team when you have such constants in those spots?
It just gives you that confidence that that there's a guy that's been through it, however many years. Matt's been a starter for us since midway through his freshman year and taking a ton of faceoffs in a ton of games. So a lot of experience there, and it's been fun to work with that faceoff group and for him to impart that experience on the younger guys and for those guys to grow from that. So, not only is it impactful, from, scrimmages and games, but also continuing to pass along, the knowledge is helpful. You look at Luke Downs and, coming on last year and having a really strong year, and coming back and, being able to build on that experience is helpful. And then imparting that in our goalie unit. We've had a heck of a battle, as good as Luke is, we got some strong goalies that, we feel very highly about. And, Luke's continued to be challenged, to be sharp and to stay on his game, to make sure he continues to try to solidify that starting role. And our goalie culture is very healthy because of it all, as well as our face-off culture.
We talked to Charley Toomey a little bit earlier about moving the Loyola Towson game into April and how in a dream world you guys are playing that game on a weekend at some point. But how important is it simply to get it into a more appealing spot on the calendar, whether it's a weekend or deeper into the season where more people might be able to attend it? And just how much of a priority was that for you this offseason?
Right. We're fortunate, so much great lacrosse right here in Baltimore at all different levels, from youth all the way through, to college. So I think it's important for all the college teams in, the greater Baltimore area to, try to find, great time within the schedule if we can to be able to give these great games back to the community and to be able to have those be attractive, from being able to show up and be at, Unitas Stadium or Ridley or Homewood or down at UMBC and all over, being able to, be a part of, a decent weathered game, even though we're a spring sport, games start in February 1st. So that's, that makes it a challenge, as well as the conference schedules now. A lot of teams are reluctant to play within their conference schedules just because, those games mean so much more with how everything shakes out when you get to the NCAA tournament selection process. Before you could play, a Towson Loyola game late April on a Saturday, and Towson Hopkins and things like that, and the late April slots. But those are all taken up now by conference games, for all the teams. So it makes it harder, for sure. But, I think it's, keeping those games intact is vital, and trying to find the best opportunity for for everybody to enjoy them is kind of the next best step.
I also saw on the schedule you're going to Houston to play a game this year.
Yes. Yeah, we're playing Virginia down there. March 8th, I believe it is, which will be a neat opportunity. Again, anytime, I think you can take if you're making a road trip and you can take that road trip away from the other team's home site, I think that's
fair. That's a good point.
So we, that works out well for us in that regard. But again, being able to bring two top-tier Division I lacrosse teams to Houston, Texas, and showcase the sport at a high level in that area to help the sport grow and hopefully encourage kids, that are playing to, potentially want to play, at our level, in college. And if that helps, just one kid, have that dream and that vision by being able to experience that game, we've made the game better. And we got a couple of recent alums. Nick DeMeo is actually coaching down there now. Cool. With his older brother, and Kyle Berkeley are down there, and So again, it's going to be a neat experience for us. Hopefully, a great experience for the Texas lacrosse community as well.
On the subject of Nick DeMeo, obviously the big loss on that offense. Who has an opportunity, you think, to kind of step into a larger role with his departure?
It's a great question. We got a lot of options. We knew Nick brought a lot to the table. The biggest thing, if anybody attended a game or streamed it, you could always hear his voice. That thick Boston accent. So that's one thing that, again, a new voice or a collective group of voices are trying to be heard and working together. So, we're looking at a few different guys in that role with Matt Burnham and Ronan Fitzpatrick as far as the, kind of the natural lefties in that group. Also swinging around with Ryan Schreier being back and healthy, who started for us the back end of his freshman year at attack, being able to be into the mix as well.
I did want to bring up just one, because you mentioned, obviously, there's so much back, but there is a few freshmen that are interesting, and I think one from a local standpoint that I know you said got some run in the fall. Owen Scott from Calvert Hall. Is he somebody that maybe can have a role for you?
Yeah, he proved in the fall that he, is capable of playing at a high level. I think as, like any freshman, the more we add, the more challenging it becomes for them. So, he's continuing to do well, put himself in position to, has played in our scrimmages and gotten some good, opportunities and runs there. So, yeah, we expect to see him on the field this spring.
Shawn Nadelen, the season gets underway. I can't help but notice there's a trip to Syracuse that's looming. After how that went, that could be a fun one. But before that, next Tuesday, at home against Hopkins, talking about those great local rivalry games. That's how the season will begin for the Tigers on Tuesday, and then at Syracuse the following week. Always appreciate you. Looking forward to seeing you real soon. Thank you for taking the time for us, Coach.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Take care.
Shawn Nadelen, head coach of the Tigers. We wrap with your thumbnail on Towson.
They're known. Like, you know what you're going to get. Yes, there are certainly some pieces like Colby Bars and Nick DeMeo who aren't there, but you have a lot more answers than you do questions. And, you look at the CAA, and let's face it, the league beyond Towson and Delaware wasn't particularly strong last year. I thought Fairfield was actually a pretty decent team. But after you got beyond that, there was a pretty big gap. And so, do any of those teams manage, like a Fairfield or a Drexel or a Hofstra, manage to narrow that gap? Because if not, then it becomes kind of a Hofstra or a Delaware and Towson show again. And Towson won those two games at the end of last season, was able to go to the tournament as a result. This year, since Delaware's leaving the league, they're not eligible to host the tournament again. So that's a game that, Towson doesn't even have to finish first necessarily in the league to host the conference tournament. That said, I think if you're them, you're obviously going to be hunted, big target on your back with all these folks back, and being the defending champs. But I do think that if we're sitting here saying, like, is there a team, best bet to win their conference around here? Because I think Johns Hopkins and Maryland are both teams that are good bets to make the NCAA tournament.
Of course, yeah.
But there's a number of good teams in the Big Ten. Like, I think Towson is a clear favorite to win its league at this point. And how do they deal with expectations? Because last year was about restoration. Those guys were really, really excited about getting Towson back to the top of the CAA. Now it's about maintenance and getting better and maintaining that spot at the top.
So I ask it to you this way, because I certainly understand why Shawn Nadelen had no interest in going there. But, is Towson a team that, hey, a couple of these things go right, they could be a threat to win a game in the NCAA tournament?
I think they absolutely are. The problem you're going to have is kind of similar to what we were talking about with Loyola earlier. Like, you look at those non-conference games, and they play Hopkins, Syracuse, Navy, St. Joe's, UMBC, Virginia. And if you can't pick off one of Hopkins, Syracuse, or Virginia, it quickly becomes
you have to win.
You have to win the league. And so, if you're Towson, you can certainly hear it with kind of the way Shawn answered those questions. Like, this is about getting better over the long haul and being able to improve, and you're not trying to rush through anything, because one of the worst things that could happen is, let's say they're sitting there and they're 3-3 after 6 games, or maybe even 2-4, and you don't want to feel like the season is over, because remember, they went 13-4 last year, and that had, I think, a 9-game winning streak in it. So it's not like they were off to just dominating in February and early March before it just so happened they also won the CAA. Like they got better as that year went along and figured things out. So I think for them, there's an acknowledgement that, it'd be great to pick off a Hopkins or a Syracuse or a Virginia, maybe put yourself in a position to play a home game in the NCAA tournament. But the most important thing is to be the team that actually makes it to the NCAA tournament. And I think if they're sitting there and they're paired with a 7 or 8 seed, there's no reason a team like that has a really experienced offense that checks boxes at face-off and in the goal can't be a team that wins at least one game in the NCAA tournament.
All right, that's it. 7 teams, 7 coaches. Appreciate all of them joining us today. Charley Toomey from Loyola. I guess we should say that we will get all these up. We're going to post both the audio and the video from all of these conversations, and then we'll create a landing page at glennclarkradio.com that just has links to all of those individual pieces of audio and pieces of video coming up a little bit later on today. But Charley Toomey from Loyola, Ryan Moran from UMBC, Chris Ryan from Mount St. Mary's, Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins, Joe Amplo from Navy, John Tillman from Maryland, and, of course, Shawn Nadelen from Towson. At Discourse, D1S course on Blue Sky. What's the schedule look like for you?
Mentioned earlier, St. John's and Georgetown tonight, Maryland and Wisconsin tomorrow.
Nice. That should be a heck of an atmosphere. Yeah.
Bryant and UMBC.
That's a national TV game.
It's a national TV game on Thursday. It's funny. I left for American, I don't know, around 1:30 or so, and I checked in on the live stats for UMBC up at Vermont, and they were down 10-0, and I just kind of shrugged it off. And when I got to American, got myself set up and looked at the live stats. It was after the game ended, and they won by 20, 19. Yeah. Like, it's not easy to go to Burlington and win by 19. So kind of a weird team right now, UMBC, having lost at home to New Hampshire and Maine, who is much better and is a contender in the America East, and then go on the road and rally from like 15 down or 18 down to beat Albany, and then knock off Vermont in the same trip. So interesting spot for the Retrievers, who have first place team in Bryant coming to town. So that's the Thursday game. Friday will be Georgetown and Butler. Saturday, doubleheader, Navy and Bucknell plus Towson and Drexel.
What time is Towson Drexel on?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on Saturday. Oh, there might be a Clark family appearance over at that one. We'll see how that day goes. All right, very good. Give Patrick a follow. Thanks to everybody who joined us today. Thanks to Griffin for all of his hard work. We will have a normal show tomorrow, and we'll get back into all the – we can talk more about the Super Bowl. Hooray. That sounds like fun. We'll do that when we get back. But appreciate you guys joining us for the annual College Lacrosse Preview Show.